Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're gonna call to order, Justin, could you? No, open forum. So time for the open forum. For anybody who would like to, make any comment?
Open comment? Yeah. I'd like to make one. Oh, you already did your.
But yeah,
I'd like to suggest to the board that we do like an in memoriam for members that have passed, like in March, we had 5 members that passed. And one happened to be a really dear friend of our family. So for Travis Fleming, Pat Kramer, Jim May, Eugene Spring, and Ken Squires, would the board consider doing a memoriam for them, and then as a tradition each month?
I think that's a great idea. I think the board should discuss that and see if we'd like to start that going forward. And every month we could bring up anybody that might have passed in the club and have a moment of silence. So we'll discuss that. In the meantime, we'd like to do a moment of silence.
Sure.
Please, let's do a moment of silence for the 5 we've lost. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Justin, can you do a roll call, please?
Is there another?
Somebody else want to say?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
Sorry, on behalf of the members committee, we just wanted to remind everybody that there's a spaghetti dinner on May 31st. And also that the craft show is on again, and so that'll be on Memorial Day weekend.
Everybody
You
online?
said this spaghetti dinner was when?
May 31st. There's more information in the newsletters and on Facebook, members page.
Fantastic, thank you. Anybody else?
Anyone online, Jimmy? That wants to say anything?
No one has their hand raised or.
Roll call, Brian Deutschel,
Present.
I am here. Ed. Here. Sherm Hubbard.
Here.
Jeff Lacados.
Here.
Larry Moskwa.
Here.
Brian Pender. Scott Parental
Here.
and Ronnie Ruel.
Here.
Just for clarification, Justin,
Okay.
is Ryan absent, excused, or absent? Is
He's
Ryan
absent.
absent or absent excused?
We aren't aware that
He's absent.
we don't know that he was gonna miss.
I didn't know they wasn't gonna be.
Okay, so, okay, no, because that's important.
Right. Okay, amendments to the agenda. We have one amendment. We were going to talk about, bylaw progress. Today, we're gonna table that as the board needs to have more investigations done on the bylaw recommendations with a work study, and then we'll come back to the team again next month. Other than that, that's the only amendments I have. We have approval of the minutes.
We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So Larry, I have one addition I'd like to put in there. So where it says cell tower, the cell tower, all it says is Jimmy presented update. Could we get a little bit more detail on that, whether it's been, are we working further on it? Is there more work to be done? Is it closed? And I think as we look at minutes in the future, we come back to this and say, what happened with the cell tower? Just a little bit more clarification on that.
You should have the minutes. I think we still need a motion to approve the agenda before
Oh,
we do the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
oh,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
Sorry, now, on to the minutes, Ronnie.
yeah. So
Sorry.
just when you look at the cell update, cell tower update, just as Jimmy provided an update. And I think for clarification for the future, what was the update? Is it still in progress? Is it closed? Just a bullet point to say where we at in the process.
Yeah, and I think that also comes up in the assignment log.
Yeah, so I mean, just for the minutes for that official record of the meeting,
What's that?
for the official record of the meeting, just so we could see that here.
Yep. Any other comments on the minute?
I would say in general, though, they were probably a little too brief. I think there were a couple other action items that the results weren't
A little too brief, you said?
a little too brief.
Yeah, I think the feedback you got last month was too.
Yeah,
Right. I think
one,
we gotta
one more
find that
cycle
happy
and we'll be
medium.
right on.
Right. Other than that, do we have a motion to approve the minute?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
Ryan, not sure you have someone taking notes, reading as secretary.
So, that's a good point.
I'm, I can do my best.
All right, so we move on to old business now. First item is prior meetings, actionable items. What I'd like to do there is throw that one up. I'm gonna step through the ones that, like, instead of last month, we went through all of them. I'm gonna go through the ones that do not have a close date on them. First one being number 3, member satisfaction survey with Brian. Any update to that, Brian?
Do you want me to do that now, or since it's on the agenda?
Yeah, you're gonna
later?
cover it in the agenda.
And then later I'll cover it then.
Okay. Then, status of the spectrum. Standby power for the internet. Jimmy,
Still working through that with.
still ongoing? Good. Let's update that ongoing in the matrix. And then, do we need an attorney input on bylaw change requests? I think there's more dialogue on that one as well, right, Brian?
Correct. Once we align on what we are going to propose, then we'll engage the attorney.
Yep, okay. We have a need for volunteers with expertise. We are starting a matrix on that now. We've had 3 people that have come forward. And, we're excited about that, so I expect good things coming forward in the next month on that item. I'll fill the team in as it progresses. And that, the next one's the same thing. We just wanted to make sure we get it out in the newsletter, which we need to do to gain more support.
Larry, did you skip over 14?
Pardon me?
Did you skip over 14?
Oh, yeah, I did, I'm sorry. What's the detailed plan for the credit card? Jimmy, are you ready to speak to that? We had some good findings on
We
that.
had, we have that in old business and I was planning on providing an
Okay,
update there.
that's fine. That's why we can do it there. Number 18, construction costs, temperature control installation that we needed to add to the scope of work down here with that project. And did they need to still have it with the weather or?
They did, in conversations with them, their insulation plans that they had in place, they did have to put in, we were still below freezing at times, so in order for them to do their masonry work, they were using that. As a follow-up, they did say if there was any savings, they would let me know, so if there was a point in time when they were able to stop using it, they would contact me.
And then 19, there was some discussion around needing netting on the south side of the golf course practice range, that the trees are down now.
That is still ongoing. I know in our golf meeting yesterday, we discussed that. Next steps, Brian's looking into some options for us. It's just how do we, what is the cost and how can we implement it?
Brian, is there any update to the state support for obtaining cell tower?
No, I've had a call in, and I'm waiting for a call back on that, so, I am continuing to pursue that with both our state representative and state senator.
Okay,
Can I comment on that?
sure.
The township has received a request and they have put out, notification in the review that they are planning to put a cell tower on Bouchard Road, which is right off Black River Road here. So, they are in that beginning process. And as soon as the site plan comes to me, I'll let you know that it is a done deal. But right now. we've got
Any kind of timing tied to it or no? Not yet.
No, not right now. They're just in the beginning phase. They're having meetings to make sure that they don't have any resistance or there's any problems with it, with the township ordinance and the location. But there shouldn't be any problem. That's, pretty rural out there. It's forest and rec area. So they should be they should fly right through once they go through all the process.
Maybe can we talk later on that? Cause, I wanna make sure that they're aware that the club area may be available. Cause with us having a lot higher terrain here, the Bouchard Road being fairly low. I wanna make sure they're aware of, they may have an opportunity here.
Okay.
So let's talk afterwards.
Are they aware of how bad the service is here and the fact that this is the vast preponderance of their residents? I mean, we may pursue it from
I'm
that
not sure if
standpoint
it's
too.
AT&T or Verizon or if it's both of them together.
The carriers own very, very few cell towers.
Okay,
Typically, it's like American Tower, et cetera, and that actually owns the towers and they lease space from them. It's like the high tension power cables.
Yeah.
ITC owns all the high power transmission throughout the state.
Okay.
And the different power companies rent space on it to transmit powers, and the phone's very much like that.
It'll be worth the conversation, right?
Yep.
Look into viability of cell boosters, Jimmy? Any update on looking into the cell booster?
I'm still working with the IT on that. We had a couple of other projects we were trying to wrap up, but it is on his agenda too.
Okay. And then did we investigate the Dart League moving to Thursday nights?
It's sitting with me and Ian right now, our plan to discuss that with the head of the Dart League. Once they wrap up next week.
Okay.
They don't start back up again until October.
Okay.
Is it September? Okay, September. We have a little bit to try to get that checked off.
Before we leave that, is there any other items that we would like to get on this matrix for the next month? Anybody online? All right, we'll move on then to the next item, which is our lodge renovation update with Jimmy.
Yeah, just as a brief update, we are on the move. They have replaced the lintels downstairs in the lure and the windows have been installed. They're now working on the lintels up on this side. Once they're done here, they'll remove the shoring and continue on. So projects wise, we are on track with that.
Okay. The next item is the credit card processing fee.
We got a question here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that gonna be done by Memorial Day
Their
weekend?
their target date is prior to Memorial Weekend. The contractor that's here has work scheduled for June 1st, so
Oh.
he also has a deadline to meet, so his plan is to be done. They knew when they started the work, that was their deadline, so. You know, we have a couple other projects going on in the lure and things along those nature that also have to be wrapped up by Memorial Weekend with the flooring installs and painting, so. We are currently on track for everything moving forward as long as everything holds.
Thank you.
Hey, Larry, can we give a shout out to the team of volunteers that painted the handrails too?
They did what, I'm sorry?
They painted the handrails.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna cover that when I covered the other,
Okay,
but yeah, I got that coming. The credit card processing fee?
Yeah, so the letter has gone out to the membership. It was in their statement stuffer, so everybody that received a paper statement, it was in there. Anybody that received an email statement would have received the PDF version of that statement stuffer, so the letter for that has gone out. We have contacted and signed the agreement with Avalon to initiate that on the ETS side. They have been notified to start it on April 15th. And then we are working with Clubsoft in there. We're continuing to do research with Clubsoft right now on their options for us to try to recoup all of our costs going forward. They have a different payment processing that they're doing in-house. It requires some changes in our systems, but we're looking into what our upfront costs might be and what our recoupable costs would be in the long term. So.
That's kind of a big deal, just so everybody knows I had some conversations with Ian last week and it's still in the investigation stage, but we think we potentially can do it fairly quickly. It's moving the POS system to the cloud instead of the plug-in wired. which means there's a few things we can take advantage of with that. One is we're able to have handheld devices for the waitresses. People waiting on people so they can put your order in right when you make an order, so we'll make sure we're accurate. And on top of it, they claim they can do it, our Jimmy's talking about is actually recoup all the credit card costs. So potentially, I mean, I don't get to the bottom line of what I'm talking about is potentially it could be like 10 grand to get moved to the cloud and get the equipment switched over. But you might recoup 40,000 from the credit card fees at that point that they will give back to us. So it sounds like a good business decision so far, but it's still under investigation.
To clarify, they're talking about recouping all of our processing fees, not just
Right.
credit cards. They
Right.
are looking at their system from how they have initially discussed it. We would be able to recoup all of our processing fees. Those would be passed on to the individual consumer.
Do they have a handheld units in that too as well for
They-
wait staff and
So
stuff?
it's kind of twofold. So as Larry pointed out, in order for us to go to that system, we have to go to, currently we host everything on our own server.
Right.
It's local in network. That would be going to the cloud,
Right.
which has some logistics with it. Obviously, we know we get internet outages here. If we get an internet outage, currently with an internet outage, we can still operate our point of sale because everything's hosted locally. If we went to the cloud, we would have potential down periods. We would need to look at alternative internet sources to cover. That's what, in cursory talks with them, they've done in the past. Their other clientele has a backup internet source to cover them for that gap period when their main source is down.
So Jimmy, you're talking about Starlink or something like
Yeah,
that?
you'd be talking about like Starlink, so you'd have satellite internet to back up your regular spectrum.
Yeah.
So handling that, when it goes to the cloud base, you can do a regular computer station, but they also have an app loads on the tablet, so they can go right to the table.
Perfect.
And then the same with their card readers, you can either have a local one or you can have a wireless one, so they can take your card right to the table and charge your card, and they're not having to grab your card and go back. So it gives us a little bit more opportunity. The flexibility of having a tablet is, currently we have to have fixed point of sale systems. Where with those, each point of sale is an item we pay for, but if I'm not running Five Lakes Grill that day, I can use that point of sale elsewhere. It's not fixed to the location. I can take that tablet and go down to, down to the pavilion and operate it as a point of sale.
Or where the food truck's at? Exactly.
The reason I wanted to spend a little time on that one is because from a strategic standpoint, there's a lot of work we've been talking about this quarter that we've been doing to try to become better at our operations side of the business. And we're using the 4 boxes to go through the finances, the key initiatives for the year, and then detailed actionable items for food and beverage, for example, and different committees to try to get better. And this is an example of that work, that when you go deeper and you look for new opportunities, you can get better. And we're actually behind the budget right now on this line item, okay? Now we're gonna, with credit card, because we were supposed to start the 1st of March and we didn't. So this is gonna help us, this action item has the potential to help us not only just come back to making budget, but potentially even beating budget on the credit card side. So it's just a good story of how the system is working, one example. Any more comments on this? Okay, move on to members' communications. Ryan's not here, we're gonna have to table that one for right now. On to 2024 membership survey with Brian.
No, that's all loaded in Survey Monkey. We've done a couple pilot runs on it. I need to update the verbiage on the introduction to the survey in Survey Monkey and work with Ian to refine the draft of the letter of notice out to the membership. Those are the last 2 steps that we've got left to do. We also had a member at the last meeting come forward to volunteer to fund some prizes for completing the survey. She has graciously agreed to $300 in total, a $100 grand prize for somebody filling out the survey, 2 $50 awards, and 4 $25 awards
Excellent.
on it. So that will be a sweetener to get participation in that survey. So I'm hoping within the next week to, and with Ian being on vacation, may get pushed back a little bit, but,
Access survey monkey, so if you send me the verbiage, I can update.
okay. So I'm hoping within the next 7 to 10 days and then, to get that out. So there'll be an e-blast notice going out, and then after that, with the link, it'll also have a QR code on it. It's, you can do it on your phone. I've done it. It takes about, there's a lot of questions, but it only takes about 10 minutes to go through on it, and it will give us a wealth of information relative to what the priorities of the membership are. And there is a small demographic section in there so that we can further process the data by demographic groups.
Excellent. And I had some discussions also in the last couple of weeks with Ian about this. And we have a finite number of members that we have their emails, and the rest of them we don't. So Ian is gonna send the ones via email, the ones that have email addresses, and we're gonna send hard copies of the ones that don't, so we get as much participation as possible. And I also am stealing Justin's robocall methodology he did with the social membership vote. And I recorded a robocall this past week that's gonna also go out at the same time when you send them out, so that everybody will get a phone call describing why we need them to take the survey, why it's so important going forward. Hopefully we get a bigger number that respond.
Yeah, and timeline wise, it'll be open and it will bridge the next billing new stuffer. So within that, we'll have a QR code in that and a link on it. So everybody that gets a paper bill or electronic bill will get it also. So I think we're gonna hit them about 4 different ways, Larry. So hopefully between the overlap in those, there'll be very few that don't, and we can have paper copies up here at the lodge available for somebody to fill out too.
Yep, excellent. Okay, quarterly newsletter update, Jimmy?
As an update, we did have a March newsletter that went out. We've heard pretty good feedback. People are very happy with the product. As far as our estimates in the budget, we were pretty on track with the cost. We could afford to reduce the pages a little bit. I think we originally budgeted for 24 and we ended up with a 32-page newsletter. So we still made budget, but I think if we hold ourselves accountable for a lot of the white space that we had and do some shrinking and reduction, we can save some costs without reducing the content.
Good.
And
We
I
are
think
targeting a mid-May, so if you have, any of the committees, trying to communicate with them, get their articles in, hopefully by end of April. This last one, we were really down to the wire, had people still turning stuff in and it kept pushing the date. End of April is when we want to cut off accepting content, so that way we can have it all set and laid out and reviewed and sent to the publisher, and shipped out by mid-May. And then we'll obviously have one that'll come out after some of our Memorial and 4th of July festivities, but
Good.
Yeah, I think a key thing in that next major one that to augment the newsletter stuffer, Jimmy, is to have a very thorough list of events for the summer.
yeah, we covered through, if you recall, I covered through 60 days.
I-
The last statement stuffer, my plan is to cover the next 90. So we'll have essentially from June through August.
I would actually suggest our goal for that one needs to be to go all the way through Labor Day.
Yeah.
So, and have it
It's
on,
only 2 more weeks, that's.
Yeah. and have it on one page so that they can pull that out and put it on their refrigerator. Cause that's been the big request.
It was pretty difficult to include all the stuff we had going on for 60
Well, maybe
days
it's
on
2
one
pages
page,
then.
but I will do my best. to
Front and
try.
back, right?
Yeah, there you go. So,
Good.
How did we do on advertising revenue from that?
So currently we're coming in at about $800 of revenue for the first newsletter. We're still working on more, and I know that we haven't touched any of the revenue that we talked about. Once we get it on the website, we can charge them for actually being hosted online for further review there. So we have some potential to still increase that revenue base. In the budget, it's at 2,000, but I think we're only capturing currently the quarterly revenue. You'll have that frequent revenue that we would receive monthly for having the newsletter posted online. So they'll get a bigger presence than just once every 3 months.
Any other comment? Newsletter? Good. We move on to new business, the overnight room reservation cancellation policy.
So I have the policy here. I can read through it very briefly. This is the policy as it's stated, and there's some backup information for us to review. So we understand that this isn't a new policy that was put in place. It's been established for a while, and it is sent out with when you make a reservation with an email. Overnight accommodations are available for use by club members in good standing and their guests. Requests for overnight accommodations will be booked in the order they are received. With the exception of the peak periods listed below, members may book up to 6 rooms for the same dates. Any members desiring more than 6 rooms or who wish to sponsor a group booking must contact the administrative office for availability and rates. Cancellation fees or unpaid charges at or after checkout will be transferred to the sponsoring member's account for settlement unless alternative payment arrangements have been made. Specific rooms cannot be guaranteed. However, we will honor all requests whenever possible. All rooms are no smoking. We are, as an amendment to this policy, we are currently allowing dogs to be kenneled in the rooms. So it says no pets allowed, but we are allowing kenneled dogs in the rooms.
Are you guys gonna separate some of them?
Yeah,
Paula
we've got it.
made a good point about some people with allergies, so there's certain rooms that should be no dogs at all.
Yeah.
But there's a point of.
We have set rooms that we're trying to put
Awesome.
people who have dogs in.
Awesome.
I think the other thing is there needs to be if we're gonna do that, we need to have a very clear, strict protocol relative to dog noise, the noise on it, and what will occur if there's
I know
noise
there-
issues.
I know with cursory conversations with Ian, he is hoping that the board can resolve some of the issues of having the kennels down there, which would eliminate the need for us to house them in a.
Well, I think we're moving there's no way in hell I'd put my dogs in a kennel when I travel someplace. They're part of my family. I think it needs to be a cohesive policy of an additional charge for cleaning and then additional if there's any damage. There needs to be something worked
Well,
out.
there needs to be that too in that, but there needs to be
Right.
noise
Noise,
more than that.
right.
If there's a dog that doesn't has a barking issue and that, it's gotta be removed from the building, so it
Right.
doesn't disturb the other guests.
Absolutely.
I know in hotels, they'll say, you can't leave your dog in the room when you're not there.
Unattended, right.
Yeah,
That could be one way too, and that,
Yeah.
all I'm saying is that all needs to be part of this policy if we're gonna turn it on. We need to have all that thought out up front and not figure it out as we go.
Right.
Yep.
Noise levels to guests is something that we typically handle on a case-by-case basis, because dogs are not the only thing that can be disturbing other guests.
That is,
That's a good
Something that
point, too.
every hotel has to
Right.
deal with, because
Human
as you
beings.
know, there are numerous other things that can be seen as a nuisance for some that are not. a
That's aimed at
nuisance for
you.
others.
Sure.
This is what the last name Hubbard. Yeah. They please show up.
Okay, so as we follow through, reservations may be made up to 1 year in advance, with the exceptions of any requests that fall within the following peak period dates, where reservations must be requested up to 90 days in advance. President's Day weekend, which is our Trout Derby weekend, that is a Thursday arrival through a Monday departure. Memorial Weekend, which is a Thursday arrival through a Monday departure. June 27th through July 10th, so that covers what we deem as our 4th of July time period here. Labor Day weekend, which is a Thursday arrival through a Monday departure, and November 14th through November 17th. Those periods are all considered peak period days, and the reservations can't be made till 90 days prior. Members may not reserve more than 2 overnight rooms during peak period dates. Room reservations will not be accepted prior to noon, 90 days in advance on the commencement of a peak period. Reservations for peak period days will be subject to a 2-night minimum stay. Additional room requests will be placed on a wait list until 30 days out, at which time any available rooms will be offered to members on the wait list. First options for available rooms will be given to those members who do not have any existing reservations during the peak period dates. Reservations during peak period dates are subject to cancellation of them if member is not in good standing within 30 days of arrival date. Scroll down. As we get to our cancellation policy, which is the one in particular, cancellations received after 4 p.m., 14 days prior to a peak period arrival date will be charged 50% of the confirmed rate for the first night. For all other dates, there will be a 50% charge if reservation is not canceled by 4 p.m. the day before arrival.
So Jimmy, are you gonna talk about what's the recommended modifications to this, or?
My input that I received from Ian is I was supposed to go through our policy and show when it was established and that there was 2 separate bars in regards to these policies, so I believe it was established through the House of Beach Committee.
No, I guess, I think with the issues that we've had with people blocking out rooms and not showing up on it, I actually think that the cancellation policy should be 50% of the full reservation, not just the first night. I
Okay,
mean,
well, if I get through the rest of the stuff first, and then maybe we can have a discussion on
okay,
follow-up. This is a copy of what the email looks like that we send out to all of those that make a reservation. As a policy, our front desk is supposed to be getting both the email and telephone number of the member, which if it's already in our system, it logs automatically. And then if you're reserving for a guest, we're supposed to get the contact information for your guests, so the email and phone number for them as well. This makes sure that both you and your guests get a reservation notice. So if your guest makes a reservation and you didn't actually authorize them to do so, you would get notified and you'd be able to follow up and say, hey, no, I didn't authorize that. So as it goes through, it notifies them of check-in times, what the reservation, basically room type, check-in date, check-out date, their confirmation number, their reservation status. So if they check in, this one shows you get one at time of the reservation. You'll get one 3 days prior to when the reservation occurs, and you get one at time of check-in. So you'll be notified that they checked in, notified that they checked out. It goes through and says, room assignments cannot be guaranteed in advance. That is a big one because a lot of the members call and they want specific rooms for their guests or for themselves. We do the best we can. If we have an issue with a room, we have to be able to have the flexibility to move you. When you reserve for another hotel, you typically reserve a room type and they put you in a similar room type. If they had to switch your rooms, you wouldn't even know. Here it's a little bit different because all our guests know what our rooms are, and they'll call and say, I specifically want room 108. If we have a water leak in room 108 when your reservation is supposed to take place, we're gonna move you to a similar room type. Again, our cancellation policy is listed on each one of these notifications that go out, so that way you are being reminded of what it is. That alcoholic beverages, so sale of alcohol liquor to a bona fide member only, that policy is in there as well. So it notifies you and your guests of what the club's policies are prior to your stay.
Can you go back down for a minute? Does this cover what Brian was right there, cancellation policy? Brian, is that what you were talking about?
that's what we'll get to in that, but I
Yeah,
thought we were gonna wait to him finish up.
Yeah. He wanted to discuss follow-up on how we can potentially change it.
But I thought that's what he said. 50%.
It's the whole state, not just.
That's if
first
it's
night.
14 days.
It's only for the first night.
Okay.
These are the bars in particular that came out in regards to room reservation policies. So this all flowed through. It's nothing new. They were from 2020, so prior to my time being here. These flowed through House and Beach and then to the board. They were reviewed at that time and approved at the board level as a policy to be put in place. You know, some of the feedback we got because of some people that were upset about our cancellation policy and being charged that rate was they thought this was all of a sudden a new policy that we were putting in place, and it is in fact not. Okay. And then it's just, it brings right back up what the cancellation policy is. So that covers what we have on background information on both what our policy is, what our emails going out state, so we remind our guests on multiple occasions what the cancellation policy is. And the backup information as far as bars of when the policy was put in place. It is 4 years old, so it doesn't hurt to review that policy and decide if it is effective and do we need to change it going forward.
Good.
Yeah, my thought is, especially with the holiday weekends, and, you know, we're typically over subscribed at those dates, and we have last minute cancellations. And we have people that can't modify their plans quickly enough to take advantage of that. You know, our typical room is what, $70 right now, Jimmy?
Yeah, and an average room on a weekend would be about 72.
So we got just say $70 a round number. Somebody reserves for the whole holiday weekend and that 4 days on the short weekends, or maybe up to a week, 10 days, our 4th of July. Their cancellation charge is only $35. I think if you block out expect just for the holiday periods on it, if you reserve and you cancel out, your cancellation fee should be half of the reservation that you had, just not half of the first day.
If you can't meet that deadline.
Right.
You know, 14 days was
14, maybe it needs to be two-tiered, like it's 50% of the first day if you don't do it.
Again,
Before 14 days up to 10 days or something, but, and then, you know, if it's the
14 days
night
normal.
before,
Again, I
think
wasn't talking about the normal reservations. I was talking about strictly the
Yeah,
holiday.
in the holidays is the only one that has the 14-day requirement, and that's put in place because of, we found if it's canceled prior to that 14-day period, we have a better chance of filling
Yep.
those blocks. Past that, people have either already made other accommodations or they've had to plan to be elsewhere, and we just don't have the success rate of filling those openings.
But to Brian's point, if they cancel the night before or even 2 days before, we're probably gonna have a hard time finding somebody.
Right, that's why the 14-day period is
Yeah.
there. because
No, I think the
past that,
14-day
it's really
is
just-
great. As a matter of fact, the holiday ones, I think we even talk about going to 21 on it, so people can adjust their plans in that, but I think it needs to be substantial. If you cancel a block of rooms during the holiday period, which is our peak time, there should be, it should hurt a
I mean,
little
there's
bit.
gotta be some discretion there, right?
What's
Like,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
if grandma dies and the whole family was, you know,
I mean,
coming here and now they can't.
the
I mean, there's
manager
gotta be
has
some
discretion
discretion.
by how he enforces the policy, so there is discretion involved. If you have an extraordinary occurrence of why you can't attend, then by all means, Ian has the right to waive the fee.
Okay.
But if you just, you know, we'll talk about trout derby. Some of them wanted to cancel 2 days out because, well, you're not gonna have ice. I said, well, we have ice. You just can't take your snowmobile on the lake. Well, if I can't take my snowmobile on the lake, I don't wanna come. That's a decision you're making, not because we're not hosting the event, but because it's a last minute cancellation, which. And we told them if we weren't hosting the event, that we weren't gonna enforce the cancellation
Right.
policy at that point. But as long as the event was occurring, that your cancellation was on your behalf.
So to move this along, just to close it out, I'll make a motion to modify the room cancellation policy for the holiday periods to 50% of the full reservation.
And so you're saying.
No change in timeline or anything.
So then what that means is if it's within 14 days, it's not 50% of the first night, it's 50% of the book stay.
Correct.
I'll second for discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Appointment of the 2024 nominating committee, Sharon?
We, as I announced in, March, that, we had, three, we now have a committee of six. Tom Schaefer Senior is the chair, Nick Antonucci, Dave Burke, Larry Lampier, Don Lucas, Natalie Metter. Have all offered to find us some viable candidates for our club, if you're a member in good standing and want to run for the board. We welcome you, and please contact one of these individuals, and I know you can contact the manager or Jimmy, their assistant. And more importantly, they have a good slate of candidates. Please vote, folks, when it comes to your directors. You know, your participation and who sits up here is very, very valuable to the club and yourself, so I would ask you to run, and I'd ask you to take time to make sure that you vote in our elections.
Larry, I got a comment to make on this. I appreciate everybody volunteering to serve in that. But two of the individuals on this list were the instigators of the recall against me. I am up for, I can run again this coming year. And the nominations have to come through the nominating committee, otherwise there needs to be a petition process done. I do not feel I will get a fair shake from those two individuals. And I have a problem with them being on this committee because they were part of that recall.
Are they members in good standing?
They're members in good standing.
That's the criteria.
I just wanted my concern noted.
Wait, hold that for me.
Are you, don't you have to vote on that?
No,
Okay.
the only thing in our bylaws, we vote on the approval of the candidates.
Yep.
So as liaison, Brian, of this committee, I'll ask you if you're willing to run or want to run, please make that known to myself, and I'll make sure you're on the ballot.
Okay.
Okay,
Hey, Larry,
we're gonna bypass the social membership.
Good question.
Okay.
could you guys just spend a couple minutes and level set? Because Brian's got some concerns, but that committee is collecting interested candidates. I don't recall where this committee does any filtering or influencing of lists. People who come forward and say, I'd like to be considered, get added to a list, whatever roundtable conversations go on, but Brian, unless I'm misrepresenting something,
There is no requirement that they forward all candidates to the board.
well, let's clarify some basic expectations, right? I mean, it's not a screening committee as far as I know, in terms of its intent and its purpose. Go ahead. I was on the nominating committee a few years back, and the way they structured it was they have a list of new candidates, but they also give privilege to a list of the candidates that wanted to be on the board but couldn't because of no open opportunity to do it. So you're gonna see a little bit of, hey, we need to let so-and-so have a shot at it. For example, nothing against Brian, just Brian's already been on the board. There's gonna be a list of people that have been on for years, for example, wanting to be on the board, but they're gonna be elevated, little priority. That's how we ran when I was on.
I'm confused. I'm confused with your concern, Greg.
Does that help, Greg?
Basically, anybody that wants to run for the board should be able to get in and run for the board,
That's
right?
my point, Ed, is there is no filtering going on. But there is but I do think.
Right, I didn't think there was any filtering.
There is a filter.
I've served on the
There is a
nominating
vote.
committee 3 different times, and we've never filtered. Anybody that wants to come, well, when I was on there, Dave, there was no filter. It's about who, you know, if you wanna run, you're put forth before the board to consider. And we never
Let me
eliminated
pick two
anybody.
different examples, okay? People who volunteer may or may not know how much of a time commitment is involved in sitting up the table. I do because I did.
Sure.
You guys do because you're there. And we have candidates who could come forward not knowing that. And therefore, one role that the nominating committee has is fulfilling that. Are you sure you're ready to sign up for what you're signing up for? Which is not in any way saying we like you or we don't like
Right.
you. You have a place in line or you don't have a place in line. As far as I know, there is no line and there is no preferential influence of any kind. And I'm hoping that you guys don't need me to say that, but since Brian raised the topic, let's just clarify. There is not an influence, there's not a filtering mechanism there. We don't want an election where there's a perception that you gotta go sing kumbaya with a committee before you can get put on the ballot. It's not like that at all. Well, I haven't heard you guys as a board stand up and just make that declaration. So that's what I'm trying to
Show us in the
accomplish.
bylaws.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
just
know how
does,
difficult that's gonna be, but.
The bylaw,
Nominating committee consisting of 6 association members in good standing. None of the appointees to the committee shall be a director. The nominating committee shall nominate 5 or more members in good standing. The report of the committee shall be submitted to the board at the June meeting for its approval. Shall be published in the next ensuing issue of the Lost Lake News and shall be posted in a prominent place on the bulletin board in the clubhouse. Nominees' resumes and photographs shall be published in the August issue of the news.
What I'm trying to say is it's fair if Brian does have a concern for perception.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for the strength coming back to say, Brian, appreciate that observation, but you don't have to worry about that because we've directed something otherwise. I mean, this is pretty
Well,
basic.
the bylaws don't go specific enough to say how that committee operates.
Right.
So you can be assured that I think I've heard 2 versions.
But
even here,
let me
that-
clarify.
That it's up to the committee and the liaison at the time.
Kind
So
of.
Just, I want to finish sentence, but.
The nominating committee role, and I learned it really well, was you get a bunch of candidates and you don't bias them in any way. So let's get that off the table. We're not looking at reputation or person or gender or whatever. We didn't do that. There's no discrimination. The only filter that was applied, because I was on there, was you gotta give some people who really want to be on the board an opportunity because there's limited openings. Is that clarified?
But there's no
Okay.
limit to the list of nominees.
No, I didn't say that.
That don't work for me, Dave, as a liaison and being on this committee, we never gave precedence over one person or the other that ever wanted to run for this board, and I can assure you, as me being liaison, anybody who wants to run on this board, anybody who has interference or has a problem, I want you on there, even if your opinion's different than mine, you're whatever, you wear your underwear inside or out, I don't care. If you wanna run, please run, because we need as many cross sections of people as we can. And I will guarantee this whole audience and this whole board that nobody will be excluded on that
Didn't
list.
say-
I hope we had 20 candidates.
Didn't say they would be
Well,
excluded.
well, how do you say?
They have the
there's a
ones
preference?
they have the ones that have been on the waiting list, if you will, for years. Then they have the new,
Dave, nobody's ever been on the waiting list for the board in the last 3 years. I mean, hell, we had 2 people on the nominating committee at one time, with myself and Bruce Bingham, and we struggled to get 3 people to run. All right, I mean, I'm not trying, maybe this wasn't.
there's a
bad.
long list of those who want to be on the board that they want to give a fair shake to.
But how do you give them a fair shake?
You call them.
Other than you put them on the list as a candidate, and the members are gonna have to decide when they vote.
Bruce Bingham started calling in the club roster when I was on with him.
you gotta call
He was- No, Bruce
Yeah.
was through 300 people.
Yeah,
He was
we
through
did.
He was
300
calling it.
people.
All right,
We
all right.
took the whole member list when
Yeah.
I was on the nominating committee, because as the liaison from the board, we took the entire list. The members of that nominating committee each took 3 pages. We called everybody on that list, asked them if they were interested. We coded each one, not at this time, so that the next group coming along could say, oh, not at this time, it wasn't good for them, but call them again. They might definitely, if I couldn't contact anybody, we tried to find out from the office if there was any other further contact information from them, but we went through that whole list, the entire membership list. Because like Sherm said, we were struggling to get members that
Right.
wanted to run.
Right.
So that was the way we did it.
Okay.
Okay,
So
I was on it a couple of years ago and it's
Yeah.
not the way it was
Scott, do you-
operated then.
To your point,
everybody.
do you think there should be a bylaw revision?
Well, I was just
structuring this?
gonna
To me, it
say,
sounds like this needs to have some detail, that we need clarity on how this is gonna work every time.
it sounds like every committee's done it a little
little
different.
different,
and,
Yeah, of course.
Well, when
Yeah,
you get
for
in,
sure, and
Well, that's
section
because
of
we
the
haven't
bylaws.
really laid out what the club expects of them beyond what we just read in the bylaws, so.
Natalie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Brian, as far as you're concerned and anybody else is noted, I'm on the committee and, you know, well, with your Sherm with no favoritism, if you wanna call it that,
I agree.
you know, so I can tell you that, give you my word on that.
So the one question I would have is back to Greg's point. So you said there's no filtering, no nothing, and I understand that from a committee perspective. But it says in the bylaws, then the committee has to come to the board in a June meeting and get approval of 5 or 6 candidates.
Or whoever they have.
Is that where the filtering starts?
Yes.
It's a.
Why?
a
It
minimum.
sounds like we're getting ready to filter something right there.
They nominate 5 or
They
more
have to be a
members.
member of good
Stay.
standing.
Right, but when those 5, say he comes with 25,
Right.
if he comes with 25 members, how are we filtering them, or are we only approving if they're members in good standing?
That's it.
And that's it.
Just if they're a member. of good standing. That's the only filter applied.
So who is gonna pick so you're gonna let 25 run
25
for 3
run.
open
Yep.
positions?
Yep.
Yep.
And it only criteria the board's gonna approve is they're members in good standing?
Correct.
Okay, good, we're good.
Yeah.
However, we didn't, that's not documented.
That's not documented, so we need to make a bylaw.
So
change
that's the
states
point
that.
is maybe what our bylaw updates, we can clarify this a little
Yeah.
more so that it's
'Cause
clear.
it just says approve.
Yeah,
What does that
it
mean?
doesn't, well, generally, we've had a hard time getting enough candidates, but there is possibility somebody could come with 25. and
Right,
So,
I'm not sure that's I don't see it as a problem, but. it's
let's,
great
let's,
there- that many
so what are you
people.
gonna do if we only get 2 that wanna run this time around? There's 3 open spots.
oopsie.
Yeah.
I-
You gotta work
I
harder.
mean, I'm not. and-
You
and I'm
gotta
not
do
trying-
double time.
And there's,
Terms
there,
extended.
and there's one other thing that I would like to say, you know, there's 9 of us here. And if I'm doing something inappropriately on nominations, I hope 9 of you people or 8 of you people or 7 of you people will point out to me the problems and openly talk to our membership about something that I'm doing wrong. And I'm just gonna state that clearly, that we as a working board should make sure that we're governance of each other, that we're doing things accordingly. So.
Well, but I think, you know, a lot of this. If it's really a sensitive matter like this, you know, obviously Brian's sensitive to it. Then, you know, our documentation ought to provide more direction than relying on good intent of people. You know, that's just good policy on running an
yeah,
organization.
we can look at the bylaw and see if we can make it stronger.
We don't have to do it this cycle,
Right.
but at some point we ought to probably put that on
The
the list.
key was to bring the best nominees forward.
Yep.
Right.
All right,
But see, that's the problem.
But not editing that list.
In whose opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the members to decide who they want.
That's right. There's 25 on there, there's 25.
Well,
Big
it-
three.
in board we trust, right? In conservation committee we trust, in nominating committee we trust, that's what we're doing. We're trusting that they're vetting and they're talking and they're doing whatever they gotta do to provide the best list from an old list, new list, updated list, whatever you wanna call it. Provide that to the board. Then the board says, I like these 5 candidates, or 10, or 20. There's nothing wrong with, let me
It's
clarify.
not about like, it's about whether you're a member in good standing or not.
Well, but if you exclude somebody, you gotta have clear reason why. And it's not clear to me. that
Well, they
we
do.
set
They
up
keep
that
track of
policy. What's that?
They keep track of that in the matrix that they have.
Could I see that
He
matrix?
doesn't know the matrix. I mean, he's the nominating
Yeah.
committee. So I'm just, where does this make?
I could show you when I was on the committee, if you wanna have it offline. There is tables out there of all the people have requested, whether they're going to be nominated or want to be on the board or not. Delayed, not delayed, whatever, not filtered.
I'm just, but those are people that have been called that said they don't wanna run, or maybe in the future, or maybe whenever. This is,
So that's about as filtering as it gets.
I mean,
Well-
as far as I'm concerned, I hope we have a slate of 25 candidates this year. I hope we have wonderful election and we can, you know, have some people that step up and serve and go forward. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, God, we're all family, we're all
Right.
neighbors here.
But
I
don't
think
we
our
want to
opinions-
entrust, don't we want to entrust our nominating committee that that the board put together?
Been trust in what? What is there to trust other than there's a group of people that wanna try to help out? It's the first time in recent memory, we've actually had 6 on the committee. I mean, less than 2 years ago, we had 2.
Well, then get rid of the nominating committee and let the board put the list together.
The bylaws.
I know, but I mean, that's essentially what
mean,
you're saying.
Well, fine. I'm not saying that. I'm saying these people are here to do a task to try to get people to run. And it's not in the purview of any of us. If you're a member in good standing and you want to run for the board, you know, I mean, and I'm gonna use my friend Stan Anderson, God love him, and he's gone. I mean, if Stan ran for the board and as controversial as he was, he'd probably have a hard time getting elected, but he deserves to run if he chooses to run.
Yes.
And it's not up to whether I believe in his views or what he has going on or what he sees his club as. You know, we're opening into micromanaging every small aspect. Our bylaws have survived for almost 100 years. They were set up. If we need to change something in them, we should be changing that with good cause, not just because we can't act as adults. You know, and I'll come out and forcefully stay right to you, Brian. You belong on the board. I appreciate you on the board and you have a lot of knowledge to give to this board. Do I agree with everything? No. Do you agree with me?
But
No.
Trevor,
But-
it's not about me, it's about people having conflicts of interest based upon their actions. And there's nothing in the bylaws that says anybody that comes to that committee that's in good standing has to be nominated by that committee.
But I think
Who the
that is
nominate-
the consensus of this board, that in fact, this should be what happens.
Right.
And so if something,
I hear that,
something,
I
and
hear
I can
that.
capture that in the minutes, and if something other than that happens, I think the board would push back on that.
That is what happens. They provide a list and you approve it, nay or yea.
Yes, but I'm saying if they've done any of the filtering that's mentioned, I think that's improper.
Right.
I didn't say they filter. They bring a list to the board.
Well,
My
whether
concern's
you
been
use that or
noted.
not, however it was implied, it was that
We
there's
can move on.
filtering.
Well,
I would make
I-
a motion to try to wrap this up. That the board today, since we have the liaison and some of the members of the committee here, that the board make a request. That when the nominating committee brings forward candidates, that they bring forward a list of people they chose not to consider on that list, or that they remove from that list. And then we'll get to see both and the board has to decide.
That's great.
Or how about, how about we word it differently?
Well,
How about we say that the committee will bring forth all candidates that are in good standing that
Absolutely.
express an interest to run.
Absolutely.
Be that simple.
That's-
That's our direction for this year, and then let's work on the bylaws, make it little,
Was
so we
that
don't have to have
direction
this
different the other
conversation
year?
again.
No.
Was that direction any different than that every year, every year?
Well, we don't
We don't know.
know that. I would heard something that sounded maybe suspect.
sounds like there's some different.
Well, I can promise you on my watch, this ain't happening.
So-
Whoever wants to run will be
So
put on and
the-
run.
So capture the motion.
Capture the motion, the nominating committee.
So
will
I
bring forth-
accept the amended motion.
Will bring forth the list of all members in good standing who want to run for the board.
Correct.
Period.
Correct.
I'll second.
Ed second. All in favor?
Aye.
No. You have a duty to, if I'm not doing my job.
Explain your
remove
vote.
me. So, there we go.
What?
It's not that complicated.
I'm voting no.
Okay. We heard that.
Contrary to there.
Understood.
So,
Larry, Jimmy has had his hand up.
Who did?
Jimmy.
Jimmy?
I'm
You wanna run?
We'll talk about it later.
My only instant plug here is we've had a committee handbook that's been sitting at the board level for about a year now. To get reviewed, there's supposed to be a nice letter, some verbiage updates. All of these committees, we keep hearing back from them that they don't have the directive of what they're supposed to be doing. And that handbook is supposed to be, the last time the handbook was revised was like 2007. we did a revise, we met with committee chairs at the time, we sat down with some board members, but if we can get that out to the committees, I think it would drastically help some of these issues of what is their roles and responsibilities, and how are they supposed to be conducted? So,
You know, it's in the bylaws. Every committee, their role and responsibility is spelled out in the bylaws.
Standing committee.
Well, it's at such a high level that
It's very obscure on how the committee is supposed to. It gives them their role, but it doesn't tell them how they're supposed to operate. And I think with that structure in place, because we have a handbook, which is supposed to be the policies by which they're adhering to, updates to those policies should take place on a frequent enough level that people are at the same understanding. Seems like we have a lot of committees that are operating differently from year to year because the understanding isn't the same. I'm just asking that we can try to bring that forward.
To your point. Ian was-
that to us again?
Okay, just real quick. Ian was in every meeting that I was in, by the way. So Ian is kind of like the liaison to Sherm, if you will. He was conducting our meeting, making sure it was all fair. And I hope that that helps this discussion. So he was the referee. Does that help? I mean, he knows,
I can't speak for him because I'm not Ian, so, and he's not here to speak for himself.
okay, if a
But I
manager or
absolutely
assistant
understand.
manager is part of it.
There, typically in every committee meeting that we have, there's at least someone from management there to help coordinate these things.
Okay, you're gonna send out the handbook again.
We'll send it.
We already passed the motion of how we're gonna operate this year. Any other comments? We move on. Good. New member announcements, Ronnie?
Okay, so Justin, did you
No,
do the
has
tabulation?
everybody voted? I got 7 so far. Everybody voted.
You
this
got
out.
mine?
Yeah, eight.
Well,
mine.
everybody that I have, so if there's 8 of them here, they're all in favor, so we need to welcome, Deborah Lee. Oh, yeah, there we go. I thought I could count to 7.
Do you have any comments you wanna make, Ronnie?
So I had the pleasure of interviewing Deborah, and she will be a great member. She's very anxious to get involved, and we talked about committees, so really looking forward to welcoming her to the club. So Debbie, I don't know if you're on the call or not, but congratulations and welcome to Lost Lake Woods.
Congratulations.
By the way, you're running.
You wanna run for the
Okay, we're gonna move on to a couple of our liaison reports for the committee for the 4 boxers. First one being preserve shoots with Sherm.
Thank you. Basically, what we're looking at is our initiatives on what our committees that are trying to raise some revenue and what they're trying to do. Let me get to my notes. The upper left-hand box, basically what you're looking at is a projection of scheduled hunts for the year. Some of my initial observations, this was a great walk. Our first quarter goal was $16,244. Our actual was $14,283. We ended up canceling 3 hunts during that period for lack of participation. In our discussion and walkthrough, our management team was concerned about birds and amount of birds available. And if I'd have needed to purchase birds, I could have done so this year, but it was a very astute comment to make sure that, you know, I wasn't canceling hunts because of lack of supply and some things that were in my failure. During the 23-24 season, we used over 2,000 birds, 24-25. Our expectation of what we're looking at is a need for approximately 3,000 birds. In our conversations, sometimes some things are difficult, and the guy sitting to the right of me pointed out that I had a pretty big failure rate on my day-old crop. In fact, I lost about half of the birds, you know, because of my inexperience on what I was doing. Some of that got pointed out to me, and I have the lovely excuse of, well, this is a part-time, this is this, and this is that, and he sat on the right of me and says, well, if you're gonna do something, why don't you do it right? I had to sit with that for about 24 hours because I really didn't like it. And when I thought about it, he's correct. And I made phone. You can't just turn your chicks loose and you can't, you know, go on and by looking at that, you know, it was a big plus for me to do a corrective action in what I'm doing. And that's why I'm announcing this, is some of these things are critical that we dive into. And so basically, we fulfilled 11 tower hunts out of 14 scheduled. We had an average of 23.9 hunters per hunt, maximum is 30. You know, we had 3 hunts with, 5, or I mean, that were 0 participation. We established our goals of, you know, 5 field hunts for next year, establishing some quality field habitat out at the preserve to make sure that's done. We had a great meeting yesterday with Jimmy DJ, Doyle Downey and Tom Schaefer and myself. Actually went out with, sir, Jeff was there as well. Sorry, Jeff.
Okay, I'm chocolate right.
So that was a big win by looking at what we're doing. We've worked with promotions committee, basically raffled off a hunt for, this upcoming season. It was donated to a Pheasant Forever event down in Frankenmuth, and we actually have the owner of the Bavarian Inn coming up to partake in that hunt, and that was basically through promotions. You know, we're gonna look at, you know, with the right habitat, we can have field hunts. You know, we can work with promotions to not only maybe have a corporate event up here, or different events, or look at different things. And I can't say enough good things about the 4-box. When you look at our growth drivers, we've walked through everything. We've looked at what we need to do. We've basically have an operational plan. And the nice part about this is management has the ability to have an idea of what we're doing, because basically I pulled the hunts out of my head, I won't say the other word, and said, we're gonna do this. Well, I didn't realize if I canceled 2 or 3 hunts, or I did not get enough participation, what I was affecting in the budget, and this clearly showed. While we did make up, we still have more budget to make up for the rest of our 24 season. So I mean, I personally think this is a great tool. It keeps us on focus, and it makes us think about some things that we probably don't want to think about. And sometimes, you know, I'm quasi volunteer, but I supply the birds, volunteer a lot of time to do this. So it's that double sword of, you know, sometimes it's uncomfortable to have to look at this, but it's well worthwhile, and it is a great management tool, in my opinion. So, do I have any questions that I can answer?
If I could just make a statement on this. First of all, thanks for your work on this, Sherm, you and your team. It's key that the whole purpose of the 4-boxer is to really get better operationally, understand all the inputs that go into a successful outcome, and then make adjustments to it. And as you can see on the left side of that top box, the financials, that we did miss 3. But what's the art of the possible in the latter part of the year to make those 3 back up and even overdo it? And that's where this goes. It goes into having new ground hunts. It goes into getting the field planted right to have the successful ground hunts. And there's a potential here that preserve shoots can actually come back and actually beat their budget for this year based on the documentation right here and making sure we take the right appropriate action. So thank you very much for that. And it's a perfect example of how this should work.
That's gonna help us become more operationally efficient. You know, because I view this, it's not okay for me to be almost $2,000 behind. I should have done something about it. I didn't look at it. I wasn't thinking.
Are you recovering?
I'm okay. But, so we're in a state that, you know, there's something I can do about this the rest of the year. That's what is important about this, and it's expected that we recover.
No comments? All right. I'd like to move on to our next one, which is equestrian. Well, Mr. Jeff here.
Equestrian, okay, so, as we know right now, it's still. Popped up there, Jimmy.
Yep.
It's still kind of a roundtable working group. I did supply the charter statement, if you want to view and have that displayed as well, Larry. But basically, a breakdown, we don't have the financial stuff on there. We had a scheduling issue, this past week. And, weren't able to complete that portion of the slide. However, we have up there to continue, working the roundtable to improve the equestrian area. We do have the charter statement submitted by a member now for the ad hoc committee development. Basically, talking with the members, developing equestrian events, not necessarily just horseback rides or trail rides or petting horses. There's some areas to grow and develop usage of both the clubhouse and participation of members and guests and equestrian events that are not necessarily where they're out utilizing the lands. It's training, it's mentorship, it's working with kids and education and equestrian programs. So we're kind of excited about that as potential revenue streams for the club. And then obviously a big thing is the better quality of life we have for the membership and the utilization out there, as well as the animals that are out there. That'll increase revenue as well. The growth areas that we were looking at, was previously discussed is improving the drainage out there, which will improve the paddocks, the stables, the condition of the stables themselves and stalls. A continued effort in the maintenance out there is going to be key. Some of them buildings are old, some of them new, some have been updated. I know there's some stuff out there, potential member looking at doing some donations for siding out there, which is much needed and appreciated. That all encompassed will again increase revenue on the back end, because of course people like to see nice stuff and be part of nice things. And again, quality of life of their animal is number one, because to any horse person, that is a member of their family. It's not just something out there. I know we had spoke, Jimmy is currently and actively looking to hire a maintenance specific person out there that is comfortable around the animals, not necessarily there to work with the animals, however, knows how to safely be around them, to work on the maintenance and upkeep of the infrastructure out there without being tasked on moving and maneuvering horses, right? But they have to be comfortable around them. So if you know anybody, please tell them to apply for it, because we are in bad need of it. This will free up time by our current employees out there, where they won't have to work on dealing with maintenance issues. They can focus on animal care and improvement, right? And that's what they're out there to do. Other than that, trail maintenance. One thing that was discussed at the last roundtable was definitely working on a way to contract the hay, rather than being at the whim of the market every season. So if we sign a contract moving into the fall season, it's locked in at that price, so our budget will be a little bit more consistent. And we know we have a good source of hay throughout the winter months.
I think we're closer to that.
Yeah, I know there's a couple that are close that are willing to even allow it, as long as we sign an intent.
Yep.
They're willing to keep it in their barns and let us pick it up as needed through the winter, because we don't have a way to store it. But they're just looking to make sure that they have a commitment to offload their product. In regards to this slide, I think that's it. I do think there's been great gains out there. I'm happy to say that it's not just boarders reaching out to me. It is members with kids that like to go on rides. Members that like to bring family members up to go for rides, but they're not necessarily, an equestrian person. It's no different than people like going up on a side-by-side ride in the trails. They like to go up and bring their family out and go on a trail ride. So it's good to see multiple parts of the club reaching out about it.
So a comment I'd like to make on this, first of all, thanks for your time and effort on this, Jeff. What's good about this tool is we don't just have the committee do the tool. We bring experts, we bring people that our members that are very knowledgeable about whatever criteria we're talking about, whatever item we're talking about. In this one specifically, there's a couple of people from the members that have horses out there that are extremely knowledgeable. And it's really exciting, actually. It was just a timing snafu this week. So I think, when are you having the meeting, Jeff? When are you having the follow-up meeting?
25th,
25th.
Thursday at 2 o'clock.
Right, so the team is coming then, and I'm really excited just based on some of the dialogue we had in that meeting that went haywire because we didn't have everybody there yet. But there's some really good stuff about to come in this arena that I think is gonna be very beneficial to the club, like having events and doing things that people have done before here with horses and kids and everything. It's gonna be exciting.
Just a generic question. Are there club horses?
Yes.
Yes.
We have club horses.
So
club
the
owns
club owns horses.
Correct.
Okay.
15, I believe is the number that's out there.
Oh,
There are 30 horses altogether.
Yeah.
16 of which are boarded
And 14.
and 14 are club and owned by Carrie. So Carrie has horses here that she owns and stays here all winter because they are part of the herd. They don't go home, they work here, they stay here. And then she also, at times, if we have injuries or in need, like when horse camps start up, they seem to tend to get a little busier. She will bring additional horses from home, but we have a total of 30 horses out there right now that have been there all winter. And in the summertime, it can get up to 35.
No, I just wondered if we actually owned horses, like we have club boats.
As
and
a
stuff.
member, you have a slice of an
Okay.
animal out there, so
No, cool.
you can get a.
So when stuff really goes bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We'll be fighting over them horses.
Okay.
It's obsolete.
Yeah.
We need more people in charge of the rear ends.
Here we are.
But as Larry said, I just in the short conversation we had that particular day, a couple more potential revenue streams are there. And, you know, a very important statement was made yesterday by an employee in the meeting with Sherman, the preserve talks about planning. It's not necessarily about our personal experiences and growing the club to make it more robust. It's about the next generation. And more importantly, we only get one shot at it, right? We're all here making memories. We get one crack to make them. So when that was said in that meeting, it really kind of drove home that, you know, you get one opportunity to do this and you need to make those memories. And if there's one thing that I can say that everybody, no matter what their exposure or their experiences with those animals, they always recall it. And they always think back positively about it. Even if it was a traumatic experience for them, they still look at it in a positive light, which is crazy to me because I mean, some of them are wild, but you know, I think that's something that Lost Lake needs to focus on, is just another way to make those long lasting memories.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff.
Tammy mentioned that we may have up to 35 horses peak out there. What's our total capacity?
We're over capacity.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
That's why the hay has cost so much, because we've had 2 years of drought over the winter months, and so they don't have the pasture that they need to take care of them. The pastures have not ever been actual tilled for pastures. It was more or less cleared, and then the horses just eat it. You know, some of us that have been in our pastures, like I've been in my pasture 17 years. I manually maintain my own pasture. You know, fertilize it, and I petition areas off that she can get to them. We have a few other members that do that as well.
I'm just trying to assess what our upside potential is.
Yeah.
If we
we're
fixed
done.
all those things, how many more horses could we actually
with
handle?
some infrastructure change and some realignment, there's definitely a way to do it. But it's gonna be cost initiated, right? So just like anything, you gotta spend money to make money.
Until we have more property out there to establish more pasture. It
So
becomes
you're kind
cost
of at the
prohibitive.
limit now.
It does become cost prohibitive. And that's part of the budget right now. If you're budgeting for the prices of feed and like your grains and your hay from previous year's prices that don't work anymore. We used to buy a bag of grain for $7. It's up to, depending on what you use, can be 17, 25 and more, you know, so.
Especially with hay too, because that's a very demand driven price. So that's why I really want to lean towards contracting and have that locked in. And project over what we actually need by 100 bales or whatever.
Round bales are cheaper. Not all horses can eat off a round bale because they have a tendency to be more dusty. You can't store them outside for an extended period because we've had rotting hay, where you're losing 7 bales off that, so there goes your cost savings. Square bales are up to, I can see them going up to $8-9 this year, if they have another hard year.
Bale of hay a day, each horse.
Nah, not. It all
It depends on the
horse.
horse. Some horses are very easy keepers, some are more harder keepers, so it just, you really cannot. You know, my
they
horse
just
gets a
won't
my horse gets a cup of oats and maybe another part of grain into it. Another horse gets a whole scoop, you know, and that's what it needs to survive, but yeah. same thing
It
with
depends
hay.
on the time of year too, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna go through more food in the winter to stay warm, and they're gonna go through more food in times of use, so riding season,
Yep.
that kind of stuff, they're gonna burn more.
Yeah, so.
We plant fields for the deer.
Yep.
Can we grow our own hay?
We don't have, we'd have to we have to turn a lot of land into tillable, workable, agricultural revenue generating land to grow enough hay to cover down on that. That'd be a huge expense.
We don't have very fertile land here.
Yeah.
No,
Let's not
that's
get into
the
Yeah,
other
the
thing.
fields that are growing
Crop
hay right
generation
now and
process
alfalfa
because-
are decades in the making. You don't just clear woods and have a hay field next year. It's even at an agricultural level, right? You drill seed in your field that first year, it's kind of a wash because you're letting your root system establish. You mow it, you trim it, and maybe you'll get a third cut off of it that first year, but typically that first year is just to let the seed take root.
I'm just like, you look at the pheasant preserve, that looks like an old farm field to me.
Yeah, yep, well, that's, the dynamic of what you see out there is gonna change drastically this year, so. But now.
I think it's a rain. You need it.
Yeah, so this is the submitted, committee charter statement, for the proposed ad hoc committee for equestrian. Give everybody a second to read it.
Can we make sure this gets accepted by the board? Because we've had other people point out that in the past, certain ad hoc committees, charter statements have not been documented and accepted at a board level. So it'd be good to just,
I'll motion that we accept the equestrian committee's charter.
I would just maybe like to add the clarification that the written recommendations are made to the board.
Okay.
And I think there also needs to be something in there relative to supporting and attaining the budget.
Okay.
Gonna come back, man? Or what are you gonna do?
I don't think we want to wordsmith it here.
Right. Does that need to come back to us then once more?
I think that if we want to approve it, I think it's gonna have
I'll
to.
withdraw.
No, I think it's a good start, Matt, but I think there's those couple ads that we brought as a group.
What is the
forward, and
motion?
that are good.
I motion to accept the charter of the equestrian committee based upon Scott and Brian's points. I'm withdrawing my motion based upon the fact that they make the change. I never got a second, but I'm withdrawing the
So
motion.
there is no motion right
There
now.
is
They're
no
just gonna
motion.
make the change and come back.
They're gonna come back to us, yes.
So Larry, can we add that to the action items for next month?
Pardon me?
Can we add this to the action items
Sure.
for next one?
Okay, thanks, Jeff. We can move on now to treasury report with Ronnie.
Okay, so the treasurer's report continues to be a work in process. And it's in collaboration with the finance and audit committee, so we have Greg and Scott here and thank you for all the systems with this. To take the information that we're gathering from the group, again, this is a report designed for the members and for the board. So if there's any other suggestions, please let me know. So if we look at this, the report looks a little bit different. I think we tweaked it a little bit last month again. So we can see the total revenue is 153,938. Under its member activities, 59,778, and dues 94,159. Total expenses is 214,189. Cost of goods is 19,943. Other expenses 103,451. Wages and benefits 90,795. So we can see the net loss between those two is 60,252. So if we look at the summary, We can see the budget net income, it was a loss of 20,787. Our variance to budget was unfavorable, 39,465. Prior year net income was a loss of 14,040. Year over year variance was unfavorable at 46,212. So some of the key results, revenues were less than the budget expectations and compared to prior year. We are down in our overall food and beverage. We were down in our posted preserved juice. Timing correction for storage area fees plus lower than budgeted expectations. So last month, if you remember, we were over budget. We were under budget because of that. Well, it evened out. We said that it would hit this month. Expenses were slightly over budget expectations and over compared to prior year. Ahead of budget in wages, over budget in security, pay and feed and trash. Removal software, maintenance and repair equipment and insurance. So if you look at this screen, is this easy? Is this meeting the information that you'd like to see? Is it easy to read
Yes,
and understand?
yes.
Can I ask you about the trash removal?
Uh-huh.
Is that refer to the dumpster? Or the,
So Greg, can we pull this line item?
So that particular line item is the club contracting service that removes from the dumpster the maintenance buildings. And the club's contributions are everything here in the lodge, food, et cetera, plus whatever the members put in there. And that's the expense part of the picture, not the revenue part.
okay,
Which means that's part of what the club's paying the subcontractor to go take care of picking the garbage up. And we're over on our budget line item for that through February. For the month of February.
so could part of that be associated with the lodge rejuvenation because the additional trash that's generated from the construction and that?
Absolutely could be. Jimmy, you want to add any comments here?
It is not, they have separate, they are hosting their trash separately, that's
Okay.
built in with them. What it is, it's a timing issue, we had a secondary pull. We've looked at the budget and we have those periodically, it just depends on when that compactor truly needs to be emptied.
Oh, so like
By
holidays,
June, that
yeah.
should balance out, we have
Okay.
a few months out of the year where second pulls have to happen, and it all depends on influxes of people. But, based on our understanding, especially where the second pull landed, it happened like February 29th. So it got booked in February. Traditionally, it'd be booked in March. By, from our aspect, when we looked at it with Greg and the other, and other people, by the time May comes around, we should balance out. A lot of these are for the other expenses. Most of them are timing issues. Some of them are security's budget is high as compared to our operating wage budget because we've had having security cover the desk. We are making some adjustments in their hours to try to get back on budget, even though it was a choice of ours to make use of them to cover a lack of coverage that we had at the desk due to a decrease of employees. We're still gonna try to make some adjustments to get that, but we still come in net even. For the most part, we talked about hay and feed during the equestrian program. We're looking at what we can do to try to get that cost back in line. Software maintenance, that's an IT contract. He's just front loading some of his services. He has a set budget for the year. He knows what it is and it will balance. I'm not worried there. And, maintenance and repair is our biggest one that we are, drilling down on to try to see what we can do to get back in line. We had some extraordinary expenses during the first 2 months of the year that were not planned for between, culvert failure and, some part failure on our grader, which is, always gonna fall as a very expensive line item. None of those repairs are really ever gonna come in under, a couple $1,000s for repair on that particular machine. So, but we are drilling down on them specifically with some working groups and seeing what we can do to improve the budget for the year.
Ronnie, relative to comments, and I think the thing that would help is on each of the line items, if we had just a short word that said, timing issue
Okay.
or, needs deep dive on it, because the ones that need deep dive, obviously, that's what we as a board should be spending our time on. If it's strictly a timing issue, garbage pickup was this month versus the first month in April versus the last month in March. We don't need to spend any time on that.
Brian, the comments you're looking for are actually already in a spreadsheet that we're looking at monthly for the variances where this information comes from. And frankly, I ran out of real estate space on the screen and we're still trying to figure out how to get rid of some words and add content that helps it get simple.
Maybe you could make it strictly as, in brackets, do T for timing
Yeah,
Okay.
on it, or
idea.
D for deep dive on each one, and just have it that simple.
totally fair comment.
Yeah, the one change we made is we made it into bullet points. Last year it was like a paragraph, so we keep fine tuning this. We just keep running out of room. So great point on it. So again.
We're gonna start at the bottom a little bit so we free up some space.
Yeah, it's like you could get about 3 characters worth there.
You have a question?
Yeah, just for, where it says expenses in the green column,
Yeah,
is that tied to, should that be other expenses to tie it into the graph? It's 103,000 tied to that green expense statement.
Some of, but the green comments under expenses covers all 3 categories.
wages.
If it turned out that
salaries.
there was a material variance in cost of goods, that would be referenced and called out. If it turns out that wages was a key contributor, that would be called out. And in fact, the first bullet there says ahead of budget on wages. Part of why we were ahead of budget is because there's a less than full-time role covering the front desk in a more than standard number of hours. And to make
Okay.
up for that,
I understand.
our security staff pinch hits, and in the end, we save money because of
I
that,
gotcha.
but we got 2 line items that sort of partially offset each other here. So
Okay,
those bullets are covering the entire bar.
okay, they're not separate. They mean
No.
the same, right?
Mhm.
The bar and the text. Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
Okay, so we go to the next page. This is February, this is year to date. So again, we see year to date, where our member activities was 116,337, dues 185,752. Total revenue is 302,089. Total expenses, cost of goods 35,447. Other expenses 180,153. Wages and benefits 185,996, totaling 410,585. So we had a net loss of 108,507. So again, as we look at the year-to-date results in February, the budget net income loss was 78,621. Variance to budget was unfavorable, a negative 29,886. Prior year net income was a loss of 58,259. Year-over-year variance was unfavorable, 50,248. So the key results here, net income, the loss, we are $29,000, 29,886 behind budget expectations through February 2024. Revenues year to date are less than budget expectations and less than the prior year through February. Key usage down in food and beverage. Key events down in preserve shoots, preserve, the 4 box that we just went through. Key usage down in storage area fees. Cost of goods over budget being reviewed by management. Results need to be reported. Overall expenses slightly over budget and over prior year. Key variances include security being used to offset front desk staff temporarily, alternative hay sources being pursued, yet unplanned expenses for road grader repair and culvert replacement at Road and Woods. So, this is gonna tie into the 4 boxes that we talked about. So as we heard today, the equestrian was here, the preserves. So it's gonna really tie together where we're gonna dive deeper in those 4 boxes and show the summary in here. Any comments on this?
Yeah, I got a question on this one, or sure, maybe you could help. On the 4 box you showed that we were only like $1,500 off.
Yeah, that's true. That was through March's first quarter.
Right,
That-
so that lines up with this.
Yeah, and well,
So-
this, no, that's February. So we're gonna see an improvement in the preserve hunts when we do the March
Okay,
year to date, because at the March, we ended up having 2 shoots in March instead of 1. One of the Februarys got moved over to the first
Okay.
weekend of March. So that's gonna show us, that'll bring us back in line of basically like $2,000,
Okay.
difference. So that's where.
I'm looking at $29,000 to $50,000 versus last year and that, and if the gap's only 1,500 and preserves and that, it's not a big fraction of that. at
Right,
all.
yeah, no, yeah, we're basically on we're within $1,900 of budget, what was budgeted for the year for 24. And I think fall I've got 2 safari clubs coming back, so there's 2 big hunts booked right there in the first 2 weekends of September. And hopefully with a positive outcome in fields and what we're looking at, I think we can have a banner year.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at year to date.
Okay.
So thank
No,
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions? Scott?
I'd just like to comment that while we talk about there's a lot of timing issues with getting back to budget. We also have to keep in mind that the budget actually is a $200,000 deficit. And as a part of that, the budget also includes increases in utilization and member fees and revenues. And so that's the importance of the four boxers to help utilize that as a tool to ensure that we can be as successful as possible with generating, the revenues that we have included in the budget. Otherwise, if we end up falling behind on those revenues, then that $200,000 projected deficit could very well be, higher than that.
Well, I think the value of the four boxes, and I think Sherm said it well, it's like, looking at the four box, you realize the impact the preserved shoots had on the
Right.
budget. Where I think when it forces us to look closer, it's gonna help us to get better.
Well, it turns out timing wise, so we're looking at February P and L data. P and Ls came out 14th of March, which is great. And two big top line revenue drivers that jumped off the page at us was food and beverage and preserved shoots. That event triggered some handful of days later, a work session around four box thinking and a diagnostic to say, here's first quarter, what's it look like? And since we were only looking at February data, Brian on the four box chart to March was management team and Sherm saying, here's what we've already hosted for shoots in March, put it up there as that, even though it's pre-released, so to speak. And most important part of the four box was the projections out in September, October, November, and December. So these four boxers are exactly the right kind of deep dive diagnostic to say, when we're off, why can we recover both on the top line revenue and on key expense areas that are directly related to it.
In my editorial to add to Greg, the most important thing I realized, it wasn't that I'm just scheduling hunts and making them available. But if I schedule something, we damn well better fill them and make sure that we're accurate on what we're projecting, because management had an expectation that basically I wasn't aware of. And, I'm thinking, hey, it's no big deal. I'll, have another hunt here or we'll do something there. Well, it's a big deal. So, and it helps with the forethought, the planning and making sure that we're successful at everything we schedule. And that's the biggest learning experience I got out of the four boxes.
Hey,
Is the storage area fees just a collection issue, or is there actually room at the storage area?
There's room and I have an e-blast plan to go out this week to address a number of different topics.
Cause I've always heard it's full.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the perception, people heard it was full, and there is a.
Yeah, but I think you've only got, you got a small percentage open down there. You got a few, but it's not a lot. It's not like it's half empty.
It's not half empty. The thing is the problem is in our rules and regs, it is stipulated what size trailer can go to what location. And the problem being is I have a bunch of space available basically for under 17-foot trailers. Everyone that's calling always wants a space that's bigger than 17 foot. And last year we didn't have but one spot available and no one wanted it due to sizing. I think in the future, if we're gonna look at maximizing our revenue, we're gonna look at the total number of spaces we have and see what we can do to realign those. And then,
Jimmy, your comments are spot on with the space utilization. Just in the financial walk went like this. The budget itself, based on last year's full storage area, has an $11,000 revenue budget expectation in it. And that $11,000 was timed in February. January came in. This year, we billed storage in January rather than February. So part of the reason we looked as strong in January is because we had a $9,500 income stream with no budget next to it. That put us ahead of budget for that line item and for the whole P&L. And in February, the offset for the budget landed in February. And the reality is, we've collected about $9,500 in revenues. Our budget says we need to be just over $11,000. And there's $1,500 to $2,000 worth of additional storage areas available that we'd like to promote and get other members to come put the rest of their equipment, whatever they'd like to store there.
I think, Greg, you bring up a key point there. Scott, you kind of mentioned it too. One of the things that we have struggled about over the years about relative to the budgeting process is the timing of what I will call seasonal bills.
Yep.
On it. We just talked about one relative to the storage area. We will run into it about every third year on the campground. When we bill for the campground rates, we run into it quite often relative to the golf course fees. It'd be good as the committee is updating the policies and procedures. If we set a hard date in there for each of those, so that consistently year after year, it's occurring at the same time and the budget reflects that. So we don't spend time year after year after year saying, no, we did it February this year, we did it March last year. No, we did it January this year, we did it February last year. No, it got warm earlier, so we charged golf 2 months early. That we just take that noise out of the system.
We're doing what we can and there's more to do there. Brian.
It's a work in process.
Yeah.
I want to clarify the fact that the reason they were billed in January is that traditionally, it's always billed in January. Last year it was billed in February because we refined the process and created a storage area agreement, which was that 30-day period allowed them to finalize it. This year, the agreement was already in place, so it was billed at its correct time.
Not poking, Jimmy. All I'm saying is
We have-
our budget process needs to be aligned with our business process.
Agreed.
The next slide. So this one is our net income, our loss, year-to-date variance to budget. So going back to what Scott said, we can see our budget through February was a negative 78,621. So we were projecting to lose 78,621 year-to-date. And our actual loss is 108,507. So through February 2024, our variance to budget is a negative 29,886. So, you know, that's something we have to keep in the back of our mind, that we are looking at a negative budget at the end of the year.
You know, last year, Ronnie, we had it documented on a different, on the year-to-date sheet. We also had the end of year budget number on it. That may be good to still
do that?
include in this.
Okay, are you taking notes?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for bringing my weapons.
Just to Scott's point, we're targeting 209-ish for the end of the year and we're already at 108.
Well, that's why as we go through these slides, I want to make sure that we're looking at what ads we can do and, you know, making additions to it. So Greg, I appreciate you taking.
So the comment that applies for us all. Getting timing right in January and February every year that I've been back on finance has been, like Brian says, a roller coaster ride where a bunch of the motion that we see is timing related. At the same time, it's not all timing related, and there's some very real business performance issues that if we're not careful, we don't pay attention to. And why there's an urgency to try and get these 4-boxers done as far throughout the operation as we can is because we're still on the bottom side of the bell curve where the summer season hasn't hit yet. As we get into the summer season, our management team is busy running the business every day, and they have far less time to sit in the room with us experts trying to help them. And frankly, that's a big issue that we got to make sure that we're not distracting from the operation of the business. So I want to say thanks to everybody. There's a lot of people that you can't see tugging on this rope, not just a couple of us here. And there's a lot more work to do. But you're seeing the results of it, because the more content we can share here, the more you, the members, can see what's going on inside the machine financially. And you can see how hard we're working to raise the operational execution levels to get us where we need to be. Ronnie, back to you.
Okay, next slide. So this was one that was pretty hard to read over the past year. We had the P&L on here, which was a long line, and it caused everything to shrink. So by this, it's a little bit easier to read it. So this was a sheet that I found that a lot of people didn't understand what it was. So if you look at the center bar, that's the break-even point. So if you see above, the lines above it, that shows where we're under budget or under budget. And the ones, yeah, it's good if it's above the line.
Yeah.
If it's below the line, it's not good. So, because the hardest thing was, you know, reading at the bottom, what does it apply to? So I think this way, it does look a little bit easier. We can see dues were under by 1,064, office were under 6,825, gift shop under 1,592, food and beverage, 11,466. We can see we're up at the lodge, we're over 7,061, maintenance under 9,991, security under 6,354, conservation, we're up 1,119. Equestrian, 4,016. We're up in golf, 7,425. Campground, we're up 2,599. The shooting sports, we're down 2,715. The beach, we are down 4,303. Music festival's not on here yet, and the other was 636. So Greg, one of the discussions we had when we looked at this, and I will tell you, there's a lot of meetings. We are still meeting at least twice a month, having a lot of discussions on top of discussions. The one thing that jumped out is we looked at this going, how can golf be up? You know, we're not golfing. And so Greg, I know we discovered what the reason was. So can you share? So everyone doesn't look at this going, we're up in golf, it's great, but it's winter time.
Yeah.
So Greg, can you talk about why this appears like we're over budget?
To provide the context that Ronnie's very appropriately looking for us to help explain. This slide is not talking about the specific revenue or an expense in a department. It's taking the net income for year to date. And we said on a prior slide that we're $29,866 more in the red than our budget planned for. And this is walking backward to say from that, why? And if you look at golf specifically, how could we be over in golf or under in golf? Frankly, either way. That's an example of a timing issue where the budget is aligned in one place and the actual expenses are aligned in another place. And the net impact of that right now is a favorable contribution. The danger signal, and Ronnie's spot on, that golf line says $7,425 to the good, right?
Mhm.
That means we better have a method that makes up for that when the golf season kicks into gear. And what we'll see is usage will come into play, and all of the other operating expenses that go with operating our golf course will come into play. And I would expect very specifically, we'll see that bar go down as we progress from March to April to May into the season. But we're dealing with a timing contribution on this chart in the month of February for the year-to-date results that this chart represents.
And the importance of this one is people are asking, can we see it by department? So we added this one last year and we just tried to simplify it so it's easier to read. So any questions on this page?
Yeah, I guess the one I've got, Ronnie, and this may get into, whenever I look at a budget gap,
Yeah.
there could be two sources of the gaps.
Mhm.
One is the budget needs refinement.
Yep.
The other one is the operations need refinement,
Yep.
need work. Looking at the dues, I think from a membership standpoint, I think we budgeted for a loss of 4 or 5 this year, maybe it was 10, somewhere around there. On it, the fact that we're off, and I cheated and looked ahead, but I didn't know when to talk about this one. If you look at your membership count, the membership count is kind of flat of where it's at. So I quite frankly would have expected dues to be above the bar, not below it. Do you have any insights on that?
So Greg, that was another topic that we talked about, because when we did the budget for this year, we only allowed for, we under budget, it seemed like we were in a really good position when we did our budget.
For February specifically, Brian, there were 3 categories of revenue shortfalls that were attacked in the order of magnitude priority. The 2 largest revenue shortfalls were preserve shoots and food and beverage first. The second collection of variances that were shortfalls had to do with the combination of dues, transfer fees, and lot sales. And the magnitude of the shortfall there was significantly less than the other 2 line items. For food and beverage and for the preserve shoots through February, year to date, we were $7,500 plus or minus in napkin math behind budget for those 2, and we put a lot of energy there. We talked specifically about all the important magnitude variances, and for both the dues and the transfer fees related to transactions and lot sale purchases, the variances were much smaller. However, what I do know is that on dues specifically, we specifically learned from last year to this year's budget that we have a planned income stream with a gradual nominal decrease in the number of members baked into the dues revenue streams in our budget. And right out of the chute, we're still off by a member or two in the plan versus actual expectations there, and we're seeing a little bit of budget there. My recollection in the February numbers is that the dues income stream was only off by $1,000 or $1,500 compared to $3,000 or $4,000 variances for the assumptions that we had with the other new member joining the system line item.
Well, for those that aren't as depth as some of us are in this and that, the transfer fees and the lot sales and that would go into the office bar on this chart. The dues goes into the dues.
Correct.
My concern is if you look at it at a monthly rate, the amount of dues that goes into the operations budget is $114. So if you divide it into 1,000, that means our membership count somewhere is off by 10
Understand.
on it. And we look at the membership chart, it's pretty much flat. So I think that that's something we need to get some further understanding on in the coming month.
So we'll go.
fair point.
Yeah,
That's good.
absolutely, it's fair and.
Oh, Jimmy?
a comment. So we don't always bill month to month. People pay differently, firstly. Secondly, we were down in our count for January. This is a year-to-date review. So January's count was behind what was budgeted. February's count is ahead of what's budgeted. We've made up on the deficit in dues. And if we hold tight to what our number is and continue to increase, because dues account for both your full members, legacy members, multiple memberships also go into that count. So if we lose multiples, you're losing your dues revenues.
Yeah, but the thing, Jimmy, is whether a member pays on a yearly basis or quarterly
I
basis,
understand it's
that-
prorated, but
that's supposed to be amortized back into this, so it should wash out.
what I'm trying to get at is if we lose multiples, we also lose that dues revenue. That was not
I got your note, Brian.
Okay.
the direct account, but we are ahead. In February, we made up where we were in January. January, we were down from the count we started with.
Larry, do we want to take a break and allow the tellers to give the results? We want to have them give the results.
If we could, because they have to
Yeah.
leave for an
No, if-
event they have to go to.
Good.
You're on.
You're up.
Yes, I do make sure you're in light of in vision of the owl. Wayne.
Where's the owl?
Right here.
Right here.
No light up here.
Oh,
Okay, as of this morning at 8 o'clock, we collected all the ballots and there was 443 ballots that were cast. Of those, 25 had to be rejected, 18 were, I'm sorry, can't remember, 16 were delinquent. And 8 had incorrect or missing signatures. And there was one with no identity on it. So that leaves a total of 418 ballots that were valid, which is greater than the 100 required for a quorum. The result of the vote, there was 307 yes, 111 no. Considering the proposal, a simple majority of the votes cast by members in good standing resulted in a yes outcome, hence the proposal passed.
So that's, congratulations, you guys. All these guys, nice job. What a
Say
great
by
job.
lands, the ballots will be held until April 29th, which they'll be disposed of unless otherwise directed. And the members of the teller committee this time were Deb Baskerville, Angie Fela, Lori Grush, Dave Kirchy, Jack Casca, Lydia Lucas, Patty Walker, and Helen and Bill Zimmerman.
Thank you to the committee.
Thank you. Great job.
Well, when does it go into effect? Right now, Andy. Line 'em up.
Definitely good work on that.
Yeah,
Yes.
Really appreciate
awesome
it.
job.
Yeah, thank you all. Way to
Yes, there was
connect
those roll
motions
calls.
to this.
Yeah.
okay, any other questions on this slide?
We should make sure we set expectations at least fairly, Justin. We got a processing process that new potential social members need to go through.
Right.
So we don't intend to show you that we got 10 new social members next month, because they might not be able to get through the process that fast. Just trying to set that expectation with everybody.
I know I connected with promotions and now that we have the results, we agreed to try to have a check-in meeting next week and push forward. I know one of the questions was about marketing and how are we pushing this out? And so we're gonna lean on that group to assist with that process. So we'll get that started right away.
Yeah, I like also, sure, we brought this idea forward last year in the spring and that. Thank you for that, and also to the board members that were here last year and that, because we worked 8 months on this to get this thing fleshed out and that, so great team effort.
And I agree with Brian. The biggest thing that I'm proud of is how much work everybody put in on this and how it transgressed and got taken over and morphed itself into a
I
true.
mean, it was month after
It
month.
was true,
grind.
but it was a true team effort that was really, really awesome. So,
A lot of member input too.
yep.
Yep, we will.
Especially from Dan.
This is a team effort, Justin Stomberg, so.
Justin was, Justin, you got it over the goal.
I'm not a Patriots fan.
Justin was our fullback.
Harry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Franco.
Okay, ready? The next slide. So this one to our capital projects, February 2024. And we had some feedback last month that the members wanted to see the status highlighted versus the capital projects. So you can see, and I'm not gonna go through all of these. You can see what the budget is, what the status is. And I think the feedback was to put a status in every line item. That was one of the changes we made this month. If it's working, where it's at, so you can see there's a status in all of these, what the cost is and what the variance is. So I don't know if there's any specifics. that we
One
want to look
comment that
at.
we should make is,
Mhm.
for the audience's sake, in the status column.
Yeah.
If you see the color yellow there, that means we expect it to move more quickly than is really happening. And in the case of that particular line item, club actually initiated a purchase order commitment for some equipment last year. And we still don't have a closed commitment, and we're not sure if we're actually gonna get that piece of equipment in-house this year yet. So there's still some supply chain issues that are affecting in this particular, that's a fringe mower at the golf course. So Brian and the team are doing what they need to, manage our existing assets, but the point is, we want to be as transparent about what we're behind as where we're planned for and on track, so that we all can see, and so that you can have confidence that we do what we say we're gonna do.
And thank you. So we broke these out by bar, so we can see the bar 2024 1, bar 2024 2, 2024 projects. The first bar was the carryover from 2023. If we go to the next page,
Ronnie, before you move off of that, this may be a timing one in that, because last year on this chart, we were running real time of that, and I think this is now backed up to go through our full accounting process and that before it comes in. I note that the security truck is marked on here as complete, but there's no value plugged in on that one.
Yeah, this is through February P and L, and therefore the invoice payments. The security truck transaction, I believe, was in March, and we'll see when with March's trial balance and spend the March data in the March treasurer's report.
Okay,
and I think the complete, we're gonna highlight differently, so we can, so that's
it'd
gonna
be nice to pay those green so they jump
Yeah.
out.
make it a darker green.
Okay.
Okay, so we go to the next page. We can see these are the bar 3 lodge renovations, so it's listing all the lodge renovations, what the status is. And then at the bottom is lodge renovations, additional funding items. So as we do bars, the other ask was, so we can keep track of the bars that were approved, that every time there's a bar, we're gonna add this to this. So we're gonna probably see this expand to three pages. You know, we were expecting some bars in April, July, September, November, so we kept that open. We also show the budget here, that our total budget is 1,653,090 and 60 cents. So any questions on either two of these
Yep,
pages?
2 more.
Okay,
And this may be a timing one also. The portico membrane is actually installed.
It is, and again, the check was written in March, so.
Okay.
that-
So everybody walking in, you should no longer see drips on your head as you walk in the middle of that area. On it, and that will protect the new paint that will go up this year too.
We're gonna miss it.
Yeah. The other one's probably a timing too, and that we've got the bar furniture in, so that's already all paid for. It's just a timing issue.
Invoice and work, the check, was,
Okay.
again, written in March. There's some other work, obviously, the drain at the end of the building has been completed, but it.
I noticed that too, and that,
I am currently working with another member of finance and audit to refine the status the verbiage for the status. It was a takeaway from our last finance and audit meeting. So some of the verbiage might change. One thing to highlight is while the security truck is purchased, the capital project is not finished. As many of you have noticed, the truck is out there, but the
There's no
emblem on
lights.
the side is not completed, so we haven't logoed it like we typically do. Which won't be a high expense, will still meet budget, but I don't want to show complete until a project is finalized and no other expense is gonna go in.
You were putting a light bar on top of that?
We have the light bar, it just needs to be.
Okay,
installed.
no, because when she ran, listen, they ran down to the front gate
Yeah.
yesterday afternoon with the tree arcing on the thing. So I saw it come up behind me, and all I had was hazards on.
The only thing that I gotta locate for the light bar is the rubber cup, so we don't leave damage on the roof when it's installed.
Okay, any other comments?
That's a great slide.
Thanks to the collaboration here, you guys are doing a good job on this. I'm telling you, it's a big project to do all this and pull it together and just a lot of meetings to get this done. So the only takeaway here is to highlight the complete in the darker green.
Yep.
So we'll do that. So again, we're taking back your suggestions. By the end of the year, we'll have this right.
I only have one question, is the green change color, red, yellow, green on status?
I think so.
Yeah, we had a yellow on the first page specifically because that action item, we all should understand that we're behind.
Yeah.
We actually cut a purchase order for a replacement mower at the golf course last year, and we still don't have a delivery date. And it's not in our control, but
So
we're behind.
that's the scale being used, red, yellow, green type
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I think you're gonna see yellow for behind. I think you're gonna see light green for the work in process that's generally on track. And I think when we see complete, it'll be a darker green. So
And probably a red.
so
for
far, we
carryover
haven't had a
projects.
reason to put red on there yet, but we could,
I would assume red would be if we already know that we have a carryover for
Yeah.
next year. I will state that, cursory conversations in our golf meeting yesterday with Brian, the triplex mower, being as it's a Toro product, we're gonna see the same lead time on that. That will be, in all intents and purposes, that will not be completed this year. It will be a carryover for next year. It
so we
is.
already know
The
we'll
lead
tag that
times,
yellow.
Toro
price.
only gives Spartan a certain number of mowers, and they have a list, get on the list, and they fulfill those orders as their mowers come in, so. When we looked at the fringe mower, they were getting about 25 a year is what he was told. So last year, we were far enough down on the list that we didn't meet that quota. They're assuming they're gonna get 25 this year, and we are on within that quota amount, but if they only receive 12 from Toro, those are the type of manufacturer delivery dates issues that we're dealing with when it comes to purchasing new products. He's looked at light use, but from a viability standpoint and a usage for us, that doesn't seem like a good option. I know one of these projects currently it's delayed. I was already informed from my supplier for the Toro Workman. It's got a 12 to 18 month lead time, so delaying that will most likely be a carryover into next year. These are things that as we look at our capital, in years past, we've been able to execute projects in the same year that we were looking at purchasing them. But as the industry continues to struggle to fulfill all its back orders, we may need to look at signing contracts one year to be fulfilled the next. With the golf carts, we know that we're running like a 9-month lead time. I know golf will be looking to bring that forward early this year to get approval for next year's budget, so.
Like we did last year.
Yeah,
Are we gonna do the same thing with our green phone?
I think those type of things, when we know they're projects that we want to have completed, we need to start authorizing a contract sooner, so we get on there. The funds won't be executed until we receive the equipment, but getting on a list, they want you to sign a contract that says you're in line. So when we know we have those products, we really need to.
So does that mean you're committing to looking at lead times moving forward? Or are you just telling me
it's not
that
that
might
I'm-
happen?
No, I'm not saying that I'm not committed to looking at lead times. I'm saying as a board and as an organization, we need to get a better understanding that we're not able to fulfill these projects as quickly as we used to.
Okay,
And we
well,
need to look at capital projects in letting contracts earlier so we can fulfill them at the time, places we need.
Okay.
Currently, we have a very rigid structure. I can only spend based off the capital asset, based off the capital budget I have. We have a fixed budget on a year-by-year basis.
I didn't try to put you in defense mode. I was just trying to see if you're signing up to do extra, which would be look ahead and put lead times down. It's an extra step on your
It
part.
is something in our current.
And we're
20-year
doing it
capital plan that
we've
we're
had to
trying
change in
do.
our business. I'm held accountable to look ahead. Cause we got customers we have to give deliveries on. So that's what I was asking you
That's a
directly.
key indicator, so yes, we have to.
I didn't say that. I asked him if he was signing up for it. He said not yet. That's okay.
No, I didn't say not yet. I said as we continue to progress in our 20-year capital plan, we will be building in. lead time.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you.
As we learn.
Yeah.
One quick clarification. Nothing with that. It's just, do the funds freeze? Like if you're not gonna make the purchase in, let's say, make it easy, 24 months.
Yeah.
Can we earmark that money and put it aside?
The board has an option to carry over the funding from a project this year to the project next year. As you see, so I've got it back up on the screen. Bar one for 2024 was carryover projects that we knew weren't complete in 23, that we still needed the funding for to complete projects in 2024. So that's still an approval process at the board level. They have to carry those funds forward. It's not a guarantee.
I got you. But we can manage it so it doesn't get absorbed back into the general fund after this 2024.
Yeah, the way we build our budgets is you would account for those funds not being available. And again, if the board is signing a contract for a procurement of an item next year, that obligation needs to be upheld at when the budgets are being
I
obtained.
got you.
Even if it was a 24-month lead time that we knew we need to get on the list now, because we want to replace it in 2026.
Got it.
If you're letting a contract, we need to assume that those funds will be spent at that time.
So to recap, if you order today, you don't get it till 2026, you're not paying more when it comes in.
I
Because you're,
can't promise that.
really? Oh,
Toro
Toro.
will not, Toro is giving us an estimate of costs, current estimates,
All right.
but true cost is assumed at the time of delivery.
Ooh. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is there any other suppliers out there?
Then it comes
For
over.
Toro,
No, I'm just, is there a replacement for different brands?
we've looked at other brands, however, Jacobson is one of the other ones, but it doesn't have a good maintenance ability here in Michigan. They haven't gotten a real big foothold. I purchased a wide area mower and to be honest, I'm a little disappointed because I was pushed to the fact that they were gonna be establishing a maintenance facility closer nearby. The closest one is like Ohio,
Okay.
so that's not very feasible for.
No, I'm just wondering if there's a substitute.
In discussions with Brian, he has not had a lot of luck with some of the other suppliers.
Okay.
So.
That's
based on-
pretty good, though.
Yeah.
So simple request, try to earmark the money and then we'll pay the difference when you actually have to buy the product if it goes up a little bit.
Right.
That
That's
would-
how we do it, but yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next
Okay,
slide.
any other comment?
Got more slides.
Okay, going to the membership slide. Okay, so we can see February 2024, we gained one number, lost two numbers. We have a net gain of one number. That loss of one number. We gained one multiple, lost zero, surrender two, so we have a net loss of one multiple. Year to date gained seven numbers, lost six numbers. We have a net gain of one number. We gained four multiples, lost five, surrendered three. We have a net loss of four multiples. So the stats for February 2024, full memberships 860, multiple memberships 72, legacy membership 7, extended family 10, and approved applicants 5. And again, there's a note. What we want to do is we're working on how we can enter the pipeline to see working with the promotions committee, who's in the pipeline and can we add that to this? So we're still working on that piece.
Hey, Ronnie, men's golf league probably will be your first change when we add the social membership
Yes.
now. Wonderful.
It's going to be interesting because we'll be able to keep track of it on this slide then.
Okay.
Nice.
So if we go to the next one, and this was another one that came as a result of conversations in here. It's easier to see the bar chart than to see all the numbers. So again, we started January 2017. We see January at the end, January 2024. The last one's gonna be up to the current month. So in the past, I did every month individually. Now we're just gonna show the recap to where we are, so we can see that we had 861 in January, we're now at 860 in February. So is this easier to understand?
Yeah, make it smile. We wanna go back up the other way.
We're working on that. Once the social memberships are in here. Okay, going to the next.
No, the thing we probably should do on this, Ronnie, is we probably should just on the title, put full memberships on here.
Right.
Good point.
Oh,
Okay,
that's a good point.
okay, thank you.
Well, the good news is,
Yeah,
it looks
different
like.
color for social stack at the top.
Yeah,
We can do stack
we-
bar charts,
Yeah, but we.
not stack, but parallel bar charts.
okay.
Well, it looks like we stabilized, though. That's pretty good news.
Yeah.
You know, that it's starting to become a stable trend.
You're using the word stable?
Stable, unstable. Sometimes.
That's a good story. Okay, so we go to the next slide. These are the backup slides that I'm just gonna point out a couple of these. So we go to the next one, just to let you know what it shows. It shows the monthly net income. The first one is by department, so it's similar to the one we saw earlier, but this is for the month of February. So we again can see the bars. So if you want to see how the departments did for just February, you can look at this slide. If you go to the next one, monthly dues. So the information that's on here, and again, this came from the members. We can see monthly dues, 94,159 for February, 185,752 year to date through February. So now we're showing how we compare to budget, how we compare February year to date, how we compare February, and where we're at against February 2023. So we had requests to show this information. We added a little bit more just so everyone could see it. I like the graphs because we can see the trending.
Yeah, it's good.
So the one thing I look at, the dark line, the black line is the current 2024. We grade out the other ones, but it's just nice to see what the trending looks like. So there's one slide I want to go through. You can just kind of jump through these. So this is monthly dues, monthly member activities. Again, you can see the black line, we're a little bit behind. Monthly wages and benefits. Okay, next slide. Monthly cost of goods. Next one. Monthly expenses. So as I look at these trending lines on the graphs, I look for the anomalies. So if you remember the graphs that were earlier, they were pretty consistent. So when I look at something like this, I talk to Ian to say, you know, what's going on, what's making the difference? And Greg, I think this is one we're still working on to dive deeper into it.
Well, the explanation for that gap between the black line and the gold line is last year.
Yeah.
And the explanation on the first two slides that we
Mhm.
talked through represents one of the big line items Jimmy mentioned earlier is the unexpected maintenance for the road grader and for the culvert out in the woods. Offhand, I'm thinking that that's north of $10,000 worth of that variance that you see there. And as we go through these reviews, we're basically taking all variances, revenues and expenses, and if they're greater than a dollar value, they become a centerpiece for a conversation where Larry and Ronnie, two or three of us from finance and audit and management, Jimmy and Ian, are going through the discussion to say, A, why? B, you don't stop with just the simple why, because that's generally a rear view mirror look. You gotta look forward and say, what are we gonna do about it going forward? In the simple cases where it's timing, Brian, like you pointed out earlier, check off the box, it's timing and move on because we expect in the next month or the next 2 months to be back on track. We can go look at that and confirm for ourselves that's the case. Most traditional businesses, though, you're looking for the other places where it's not a timing related issue. We're heavy on expenses, why? And are we in a position where we can do something about it, yes or no? Or on the top line revenue side of the fence, why are we behind on revenues? And in the case of the preserve shoots, as one of very many examples we gotta get a poke at, are we learning the right lessons learned so that looking ahead, we're doing a better job rostering up the events, rostering up the foot traffic that drives food and beverage revenues, rostering up the commitment collectively so that the promotional function and the execution function are in line with each other. There's a variance report and 2 or 3 sentence explanations for every line item that is greater than $2,000 year to date off budget, to the good or to the bad, so that that roundtable conversation happens and that leads to the 4-box discussions with subcommittees, et cetera, et cetera.
So I guess for the audience, if we see this anomaly, do we need to put anything on this page or just tie it back to the previous?
I have the comments and I can add the comments here. Frankly, there's more space on this slide for a
So-
bullet or two here
So,
compared to the front.
I
slide.
think,
Okay.
I think this would be good in that because it's obviously, if you're running a run rate in a plan or anything, when you see something that's out of your bandwidth, and then obviously we're not ready to do a Six Sigma analysis on what's in and what's out on it. But when you've got something that is out of the historical norm and that, I think it needs.
We
to
have the
have
comments
commentary.
already and we can just add them here, no problem.
I like that. So any other comments on this one?
Just a question,
Uh-huh.
more towards Brian.
Mhm.
Are you truly comfortable in January, knowing all the years we've been under control, and that would show us out of control? Are you
Well-
truly comfortable with seeing that today?
Well, if you go look at January, the budget for 2020, correct me, Scott and Craig, please jump in. If you look at the way the 2024 budget was built, it was based upon the 2023 one. I am comfortable that the black dot and the orange dot for January are the same.
If you're comfortable. I'm
Based upon that,
comfortable.
I am not comfortable, and that's why we're talking about adding the commentary on here and
Okay.
going from the departmental variance to this variance, and a lot of it's gonna be the same stuff, but pulling the top 5 contributors to that gap onto here so that they can be looked at. Like some of this may very well be, we talked about 2 of them, that's a third of it right there that Greg just talked about, the culvert and the,
But as long as you guys are
Moderator.
comfortable, then I'm okay. If you're not,
Mhm.
I hope you guys come around next meeting
So let's,
and explain how you got comfortable with it. And Ronnie, thank you for explaining so I could see that.
and some of it, and part of I would expect, part of that bar, that top 5 or top 8 that go into that gap there and that. Greg, like you mentioned right here and that, 2 they're comfortable with, they're highly explainable. There may be 3,
Then that means you're comfortable.
3, 4 on there may be undefined that we've had a miss in the business in a given area. And those are uncomfortables that a deeper dive would have to be done on.
Well, in our household, my wife says it was on sale, so we saved money. But let's move on. Thank you.
So again, we'll add that to next month. So if we see these anomalies, we'll carry over the explanation, so you don't have to go back and look at the previous page. So again, incorporating the changes that we hear here. Next month, we'll see more updates. So again, feel free, we want to refine this report so it makes sense. It makes it easy. So any other questions on the report? I want to thank Greg and Scott. I know Scott, you're a new member to the finance committee, putting in a lot of work too. So thanks for helping simplify this.
Well, it's a good group effort by the entire committee.
Okay, move on now to the manager's report.
As this is my first time doing this one, I will try to keep it pretty brief. A couple things to discuss. We do have some openings on some committees and there'll be e-blasts going out on that. But both House and Beach and promotions are still short 1 member. If you all know anybody interested, please have them fill out an application to apply. In addition to that, we've had some articles going out by the promotions committee, one of which was for the food truck branding ideas and naming. So they're looking for any branding ideas for a wrap. So if anyone wants to bring those forward. When we did the survey, the 2 most popular names that came up were Lost Lake Woods Grill on the Go and Lost Lake Woods Trailside Treats. 2 alternatives were Lost Lake Woods Sportsman's Kitchen and the Lost Diner by Lost Lake Woods. So, those are from that survey. They were really looking for input from the membership on what on these things. So as we go forward, please keep an eye out for those. And if you have input to give, we're definitely wanting it. I touched base earlier on the Clark Capital projects. Everything on those are on track and on budget. As well as our other capital line items, we're really trying to execute against what we promised we would complete this year. And if not, we're coming forward with the explanations earlier. Um, that would be all.
Okay. We would like to,
Yeah, a couple questions.
Yeah.
Jimmy, do we have a timeline when the tree brush along Lost Lake Trail is gonna be cleaned up and the stumps removed?
They are working on cleaning it now. That's one of the main tasks that my staff is completing, so I'm hoping by month's end, and then I just have to get the gentleman from Consumers back out to cut those. As far as stump removal itself, they are going to cut down to the stump, but there's not stump removal included in that. So that is something at a board level we will need to look at expense wise, what it'll cost, and that wasn't budgeted for, so.
I think we probably, Larry, I think we probably need to have that on discussion at the next meeting and that.
yep,
On it, as far as whether we want to grind those and sod that or do something down there.
As we looked into like having them carved. You know,
Those are
they're
suggestions
big, they're
that's been
big
brought up.
stumps that are right there. You see them when you first come in, like totem poles
Well,
or
we get a budget
whatever.
on that, I think we need to look at what the long-term, durability of Chinese elm is,
Oh.
once the bark comes off. I personally don't know if that's a durable wood or not,
Okay, I just,
on it from a rot
I
standpoint.
can get some quotes on, and some recommendations on if it's a good investment or not.
And I think the other question I've got is, last year we did the ditch project along Fox Road. And, because of the weather and everything else, we did not, I think, complete the seeding on that.
We
And-
seeded, we've seeded that ditch twice. There's still areas that are not seeded
There's-
correctly
there's-
that we have to do some more aggressive.
And I think the other question is, if you look at various ones, there's a homeowner down on Wood Road. There's Danae's right there at Chipmunk is just two examples, the way the scoop was taken off and where the existing lawn was. There's a very hard, unmanageable edge there. I think we need to do something so that that homeowner can mow the ditch area realistically, so that they can get the appearance of their house back with the ditching that's been done.
We'll have to work with the individual landowners in order to address most of those. It'll require us to extend past our line.
I think we, and just, again, to support the members that are along that road that want to take pride in their homes and that, I think we need to help them get back to what I would call a proper appearance. I'll use those words.
okay. We can move forward to the president's report. Just show the picture. We wanted to give a big shout out to the group that came together for the work bee to clean up the subdivision and everything. They did a fantastic job. So kudos to that team, as well as the team that came in and painted our railings going up the stairs here. Every day this week, I seen them in there working like crazy to get those painted, and it turned out fantastic. So really appreciate all the hard work, the people coming together, the club, and then making things better.
Thank you.
Who's that guy in the yellow bottom corner?
Mr. Mead.
Safety first.
Holy cow, we caught him working.
How many of you were part of that? I saw Andy there on the big cleanup and several people. It was a big turnout. It was great. Two full days for sure. I saw Ed out there a lot.
I heard there were 50+ people.
I think some people came in and had to go, people I think contributed where they could and for as long as they could. And I know I was feeling it on Sunday and Monday. It was a lot of work, and there's still a lot to do. I think that's something that'd be nice to do annually. We had great weather, of course, that helped everything. We had a little bit of an issue with the equipment breaking down on day 2, but otherwise it was just a lot of people, a lot of vehicles you saw going back and forth with brush and cleaning up. It's a lot of trips, yeah. So if you go down to the dump, you can see the contributions that were made. It's quite
What I
a
heard too, you
volume.
attracted a lot of new faces, which
Yeah.
you hate to see the same faces there all the time.
Yeah.
So that's a positive thing too.
Do we know by chance how many weekend members participated in that? Cause it's always a request that we set up things on the weekend for work fees.
I know,
There were quite a few.
yeah, there were some that could help on Saturday, but then they were heading back on Sunday, so they couldn't come back. Yeah,
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really good to hear.
Matt took a
yeah. he had the
sign up
list.
sheet, so we do have he has everybody's name.
And I had asked Matt for the volunteer appreciation. I know that's down here. But I want to make sure all the members that participated, as well as the group that was doing this, asked everyone to gather names. So as I prepare for the volunteer appreciation, we have those names and pictures. We want pictures. So if anyone else took pictures, I got the ones off Facebook. Please keep pictures and, again, working to make the volunteer appreciation, better than ever. And we've got the date on that, September 14th.
Okay, we go to the next slide. Wanted to have some discussion around this and kind of show you the group of people that came together that have been here over the years. I wasn't here in 2020, but I wanted to gather with some people that did and come up with a document that we could show the membership of how did we get from 2020 at 2.4 million, 2.3 million and the historical walk going all the way up to 7.6 million. And just have a discussion with the membership and explain kind of what happened through high level discussion of what happened through that walk. There's lessons learned that are about multiple major projects, including campground, subs and roads, and lodge renovation. This is about the lodge renovation portion of it, but there were multiple. If we look at the left quadrant that talks to the 2020 vote package that came out that did not pass, you can see that the estimate at that time was 2.3 million was the estimate of cost. And in there, in the descriptives, there was no building foundation or exterior and no mechanical, electrical, or plumbing figured into that 2.3. Then we moved forward into 2021 vote package that did pass. It went down to 1.9, and three of the main drivers why it went down to 1.9 was at the bottom of that column there where it says removed reconfiguring the driveway under the portico at entranceway. We removed dining room outdoor deck, and we removed the landscaping. So that brought it down to 1.9 and it passed. Then if we go forward into April of 2022, at that point, we had 50% engineered drawings completed. You can see that the build ready cost estimates came in at 4.4 million. And there was scope revised. So, for example, during that time frame, there was still no building foundation or exterior in there. New scope was new elevator and related mechanical, electrical, but there was still no other full scope mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And no reconfiguring of the driveway still under the portico and entrance. So at this time frame, the team thought that we could negotiate more with the contractor to bring those costs down. We thought the escalated COVID cost would come back down after COVID. And we should have communicated that to the entire membership at that time. But we didn't because we thought they would come back down. Then if you move forward into 2023 March, we now had 90% engineered drawings. The team got together and had a core of the building discussion and what they were going to do about the core of the building. At that time, other scope adds were put into place. For example, the foundation and the elevator in May, and they approved $909,000 to go toward those two events. The total was 7.6 million. We had a couple scope adds, which was the foundation and exterior, and they added full scale upgrade to the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing at this time. Due to the project tracking and all of the scope changes that were happening during that time, the team did do communication, but we probably could have done a better job of communication with those details to the membership, so it was clearly understood what was going on. So with this slide, what really it's intended to say and what it points to is that we had scope changes. We had communication opportunities throughout these years to maybe communicate a little better. so that everybody would be on board and know exactly what was happening, going from 2.3 to 7.6. More complete descriptive of how the scopes are changing and how it was affecting the cost, the relationship between the two. And then much more timely on communication outward to the membership is what we could have improved on. Next slide. So here are some of the captured lessons learned going forward for major projects. Number one, club leadership must follow through and execute on all projects that have been communicated to our members. Any legal, financial, or similar roadblocks that will prevent execution must be clearly communicated to the membership on a timely basis. For major projects, a funding ask to develop commercial grade cost, scope, and drawings will be brought forward as the starting phase before seeking approval of funding based on estimated cost. The club leadership must take responsibility to define and document scope before expenditures are committed. Must have engineered drawings, not informal or draft sketches and estimates before spend commitments are made. The club leadership must communicate scope changes, change orders with supporting documentation that bridges cost and content of work, including funding sources. We must have clear communication to our membership at the time when scope and cost changes from original commitments. The board, the general club manager, and our finance and audit committee, club leadership must adopt the above declarations as a standard course of business conduct for all financial approvals. All committees or individual members who are actively supporting project level club improvements must embrace the commitments outlined above. What I will commit to you is that myself, along with the board, will sit down and have some dialogue about these lessons learned and action items going forward to prevent any of this from happening again. We'll discuss about getting these directives approved into financial policies. So regardless who's on the board, when, it doesn't matter, Larry's gone. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have them in the policy, so it's just gonna be a standard business. Meantime, club leadership will move forward with these directives on the new project. So until they get put into the policy, we've got agreement with the management team that we will follow these directives going forward, just to make sure that we don't have a repeat. I personally, as the president of the board, want to apologize what happened throughout those years. We could have done better as a team. Doesn't matter who, when, how. Blame Larry and let's just move on and make sure it never happens again. All right? Any comments?
I have one, Larry. I would like, as serving under 3 different presidents on my first term of the board, I would like to make sure that we have something put together so it generates to the new people coming on the board. We have 3 new people coming on in October or, the December timeframe. We need some way on this piece, especially that the new folks are brought up to speed on what happened 2-3 years ago as the ongoing projects go. Because I'm sure Scott was aware of what happened in 2000, but I wasn't, because I wasn't on the board. I tried to get caught up. And that's all I'm saying is that we have something to hand off to the new people that get here that understand what we've gone through while we're doing this, without having to dig through meeting minutes and everything else. It's a simple, like the sheet that you got there, the four different boxes about our capital projects or long-going things that are gonna carry over, like a lodge renovation or something. That's my thoughts. It's clearly communicated.
Or Dan?
Yep, as long as they finish. Thank you. 2 suggestions. I don't want to make a big discussion over it. One would be, what was the timing up front of the project? And so that it's in your policy that timing's important.
Mhm.
And when you miss your time, there should be an automatic inflation built into the budget, so that the manager has a chance to be successful to meet the original goals. Okay?
Mhm.
And then number 2, just a scoreboard, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what you're gonna call it, on the clubhouse renovation of what we told them they were gonna get and what they got. Because that's where the transparency hasn't been.
Okay.
So just 2 suggestions. Thank you.
Yes.
to tack onto that, I think one thing we ought to do is define what this means for a timeline. When somebody comes up with a great idea for a project, we know right away that, well, that's gonna take 1.5 years before we can
Yep.
initiate that project, because, you know, this basically says you have to have engineering drawings, which means you have to fully define everything you wanna do, and somebody.
Takes time to do it right.
And it's gotta be done right, and I
Yep.
fully agree with this, because
Yep.
the only way you're gonna avoid disappointment is to have a good cost estimate that's based on an engineering drawing.
Yep. Just gotta make sure and communicate that along the way.
But we need to know how much time that's gonna be, because this whole
Yep.
thing started out, there was a lot of pressure to get construction
Sure.
going by, you know, right after trout derby. And so, you know, there's a lot of expectations there that were unrealistic, and we just need to be, nope, this is what it means for a major project.
Yeah, Scott, I think some of that goes back to,
Because if we're building a pole barn or whatever.
No, this was just talking about the major project piece, so that, you know, we'll have to find what that is, but, you know.
Yeah, I just don't wanna make sure we don't wanna
Yeah, not everything.
engineer drawings to build a whole barn, right? So we just wanna make sure we don't back ourselves
Well,
into the corner to.
but if you don't want a cost overrun, you better have some drawings.
See, yeah, let me say one example.
You can go to Menards and they've got a pole barn builder there, and you can pretty much figure out what the bill of material is and come up with a rough design that at least somebody could quote.
Yeah.
It's, so we gotta define what the criteria is. I
The
agree.
scope and timing and all that is important, and to your point. I would disagree that it's not only major projects. Let's take the lure, for example. Okay, we wanna improve the bar for what, $7,500? I don't think we really know yet how much it's gonna actually cost. Because there's not a project, there's not a scope, there's not drawing, there's gonna be electrical thrown in there, there's gonna be plumbing thrown in there, there's gonna be other things that are gonna come up. That we would hope, and it's too late to do that because we had to buy it quick and all that, but effectively, you would wanna have that. So you would know this is the plan, this is the timing, this is how much it's gonna cost, and measure ourselves against it. And the only way to have that is you have that all documented. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Not difficult. We do it all the time, or we have, and Brian's familiar with it in automotive. Whatever the delivery date is, you back it all out with some contingency in it, and that's when you have to start the project. You don't work it forward, you work it backwards. So if we know we want the club done in 2027 or 28, you work it back. And you figure out when you gotta have funding, when you gotta have quotes, et cetera, with a little padding. And you succeed.
Yep.
It's not
Well,
hard.
that's great if you start out with a targeted date in mind that's realistic.
Yeah, his point
You
is.
start out
hey,
with one
you
that's,
understand.
and you go, well, I'll just have to, get started on it. Well, it
Right.
takes a year and a half and you only got 3 months.
No, I'm saying you can do the walk up, but first look from the
Well, but
back,
the experts know what their process is.
the experts who,
When you're talking about automotive industry, you know how long it takes to do
okay,
a
call
car
it
program.
X. I'm not saying automotive.
All I'm saying is, we gotta know how long it takes to do it. So that you can commit to even expending the resources to develop the project.
Well, you do it in parallel. First, you gotta develop the plan, then you contact your contractors or your suppliers.
Everything can't be ad hoc.
We mean ad hoc.
We show up today, we got a good idea, let's start planning it. Well,
I think you're saying two different things. I think his point is, he brought up, is that in order to make sure you get engineered drawings when you need them to get good cost estimates and all that, we gotta make sure that we communicate to the membership, you can't have this done next year. You gotta plan to have it 2 years from now, so you can do what you're saying, work it back. And get the right stuff done to make it a successful event. I think that's
Understood,
what he's saying.
understood. However, I'm looking at it differently, saying the board has a responsibility. They can proactively say, we want to renovate the lodge. Do the timelines, do the investigative. Provided, not come to the members to say, go do it. Saying, get ahead of it. It's up to the 9 panel here, you got a great idea. It's not difficult. We want to renovate the lodge. Great. Great. You got full commit on board here. Lay right out. You want help in timing? Glad to help.
Dan, I'm gonna go on simple, because this was a clear meeting with me yesterday on
That's
Reserve-
Dave, that's
reserve-
David's
Or
comment.
Dave, sorry, Dave.
Yeah.
Hey, I was looking at you, I'm talking to you, Dan. Anyways.
You guys gotta sit further apart.
No, but yeah, but I went to the shooting preserve and we had a great meeting and wanna increase the fields. And I'm Jimmy and DJ, well, let's just do this. Well, we've planned for this. We've worked this stuff up. Number one, DJ doesn't have time or something else struggles with. I'm looking at this from simply, hey, we can get this done, let's get this done, it's gonna be very beneficial for us. But yet, I don't take into consideration, he's got other fields to work, he's got other things, he's planned for this, he's laid this out. So this plan from yesterday is revolving into almost a 5-year plan on fixing the fields out there and coming back and working with us. And I mean, it's a real simple thing. Hey, I can just take the tractor out here, I can disc this up, I can plant some stuff and go on. Well, it's not. And I mean, and this is what I consider relatively simple. This is simple, we're gonna put some seed in the ground and do a little stuff, add a few hours. And what we're talking about here is a major plan, and it's not simple, and there's many, many dynamics to it. And like I said, and that's why I'm saying, even on a simple basis of what I was looking at, that was no problem. I didn't realize everything else that I was affecting by saying, hey, just do this over here a little bit more. Well, we weren't planned for that. And so what I'm trying to say is that to develop something appropriately, the plan has to be established. I'm talking to your point. The plan has to be
Thank you.
established.
Now, to your point, we don't have to go through the exercise of the scope. We pretty much have the scope now. All of us have talked for 7 years about what has to get done. So we should be beyond that. Now it's the actual put down on paper, who's gonna, who, what, when, where, and why, to get a reasonable project plan. And then say, is that executable? Yes, it is. No, it's not. Oh, they've got to add a year. Then back it out. What's Jimmy gonna do? What's Ian gonna do? What's Sherm gonna do? What's Dave gonna do? Put the right people in place and do it.
We will probably ask you to raise your hand. You can help us.
I think we talk too much instead of actually moving it forward and saying this, and this gotta get done first. And actually manage it. Thank you.
Okay? Any other comment? All right, so I'm gonna move into the announcements. We have the Board of Directors Executive Session, April 13th today, 15 minutes after we adjourn this meeting. And then the Board of Director regular meeting on May 11th. Executive session on May 11th, 15 minutes after. And as we heard today earlier, on the 4th annual Arts and Crafts Show is on May 25th. The spaghetti dinner is on May 31st. And the volunteer appreciation luncheon is September 14th. Any other comments?
So we have the first, and we're gonna try to run them throughout the summer, but next Thursday is our first trivia night. It is trying to drum up business for specifically the Thursdays. Right now, our turnout is kind of lacking, so we are doing that later at night. It is an adult only event. We do plan some family trivia days throughout, so.
Great.
April 18th.
Super excited about that.
April 18th at 7:30 is when we have it starting. Additionally, we will have a Kentucky Derby event that's gonna go on May 4th. And we have the Cinco de Mayo on May 5th. So keep those dates in mind.
Keep in mind, there's a member that does it every year as well.
I'm just, we are hosting club events for all members.
Understand?
What did you say? I'm sorry.
There's a tradition that one of the members does a great job with the Kentucky Derby. All right, it's an invite, it's a low key, maybe 10, 15, 20 people. I'm just letting you know that that's gonna compete a little bit.
I mean, we compete with all of our members. Private events, but
Yeah.
You
Just a tip.
you just initiated the fact that it is an invite only event. So it is not available to all of our membership.
I was actually gonna say, maybe you wanna communicate with those members and somehow bring it all together.
That's a thought. And maybe ask them to help us run it, see how they do it.
They do a great job.
Yeah.
There you go.
Also, just to throw it out there, we're also investigating, looking at doing, we're getting a lot of suggestions from different people, which are good. You know, like we did the football events here and all that, it drew 75 to 100 people. We're trying to get more events like that going throughout the year, not just on major holidays. Things like potentially getting some local musicians to come up here and play up here on every Friday night or something, that people can come and have a few cocktails and listen to music. Just things that spark getting people to use the club more, I guess.
More visibility.
So look forward to that coming. Scott, you had a,
Yeah, I listened to the golf meeting yesterday, and since nobody brought it up, I just wanted to remind that, you know, they are looking for volunteers when they're hosting the Michigan High School.
Yeah.
And so I think that's in late May,
It is.
and so just wanted
I believe.
to bring that up.
Oh, Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
No, it's after Memorial Day weekend. It's
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday.
Okay, I'll get with you.
Uh,
Who do we see?
Deb Culver.
All right,
There's a sign-up sheet in the clubhouse.
got it.
Clubhouse.
Okay, thank you.
Another caveat, Larry, or another add is just that there's an actual Stables meeting before trivia at 5:30 on the 18th as well. So if anybody wants to partake in that, they're more than welcome to attend.
good. All kinds of good stuff going on.
Woo-hoo.
Any other comments?
Well, thank you for all your help.
Do we get a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, because it's
Thanks for coming, member.
Thank you all.
You guys, you might have. 4 days in a row. You got done early.
I know.